Thank you all for coming. Welcome to our workshop, and we'll start with our staff presentation. Mr. Whitten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is the first of 3 workshops that you all have scheduled, ethics, budget, and CRAs in April. And so the agenda for the workshop is a brief staff presentation on the ethics policies and procedures of the board with regards primarily to county staff. And so the board had a workshop back in 2013, and a lot of good things came out of that workshop, and just wanted to refresh the board, or actually educate the new board and refresh the public's memory with regards to what recommendations were ultimately proposed and accepted by the board. And so Mr. Visco will take about 15-20 minutes tops to go over that presentation, and then quickly get into the board's proposals regarding ethics. And so it sets up a staff presentation. Any cards that you may have on that really is what is meant by public comments, and then we'll quickly turn it over to the board. So if you're ready, sir, we'll turn it over to Jerry Visco, Human Resources Director.
Mr. Visco.
All right, sir. Good afternoon, Commissioners. We appreciate the opportunity to come before the board today and provide you an overview of an ethics presentation that staff provided to the board in 2013. At that time, the conversation on ethics reform was focused on improving the awareness of ethics issues with the operations staff under the jurisdiction of the county manager. However, the information in that presentation provided a very good overview of what was going on in the state at that time relating to ethics in the public sector, and we felt that the information would be helpful to the board with today's conversations. Now, several years ago, the county manager approached Human Resources and asked about the training we were providing to our employees in the area of ethics and what we might be able to do organizationally to enhance that training. At the time, Human Resources and the county attorney's office were co-facilitating a single 3-hour workshop that we called Ethics, Public Records, and Florida Sunshine Laws. As a result of our discussions, we modified that training workshop into 2 separate training workshops and expanded the ethics workshop portion into its own 3-hour interactive training session for all employees. As part of the updated ethics program, we presented various ethical scenarios and asked participants for their perspectives on whether those patterns describe behavior they would consider ethical, questionable, or unethical. And during the workshop, we immediately aggregate those responses electronically, and we share them on a percentage basis with the participants to facilitate a group discussion on how they respond to each scenario. The feedback we have received and continue to receive on this level of training has been phenomenal. It's been very, very positive. We get good responses from the group. We have excellent discussion, and the after training reports, the feedback we have is all top marks. We're very pleased with how that's been received. All right, let's see if we hit the right buttons. We'll get this to work. There we go. All right, Commissioners. We believe the reason we've decided to enhance the ethics guidance and training in that program are similar to the reasons we believe we're here today having this workshop with the board. First, while as an organization we haven't faced the ethics problems many other Florida governments have had, we want to make sure we take the appropriate proactive initiatives as an organization to minimize the potential of ethics violations occurring in the future. Secondly, we see this as an opportunity to increase awareness and sensitivity the board and staff will have related to a myriad of ethical issues that can arise in the normal course of business that we might face during the course of our careers. Third, this provides us the opportunity to focus on efforts to increase organizational transparency through the sharing and communication of ethics-related information. And finally, during a time where the public's trust in government nationwide is at historic lows, we'd like to improve the public's perception of county government and county employees by setting the highest reasonable expectations related to ethical conduct in our organization. Additionally, as we'll remind you all, on a state level, the legislature has passed ethics reform requiring all constitutional officers to complete a 4-hour ethics training program annually. That legislation also required the State Ethics Commission to adopt rules establishing a minimum course contact for those that required ethics training. By the way, our program mirrors exactly what the State Ethics Commission requires in that training. The ethics reform has continued to be an issue addressed in several legislative sessions, illustrating that there is an ongoing emphasis and importance that lawmakers in Tallahassee continue to place on this issue. Now, there have been numerous ethics failures in both the private and public sectors, highlighting the importance of having a strong ethics program. Florida public sector ethics lapses are well known. It was reported in the Tampa Tribune in May of 2012. A study by the watchdog group Integrity Florida stated that Florida leads the nation in government corruption, something we could all be very proud of. The study highlighted that Florida had 781 public officials convicted of federal corruption offenses from 2000 through 2010. Despite the attention given to the public sector since that report was first published, we continue to see lapses in ethics in the public sector, as illustrated by a couple of the examples on the slide that we're presenting today. In 2013, Sarasota County government had issues with a credit card abuse scandal where multiple employees were terminated and the county was required to hire at $100,000 a year an FDLE agent to become their ethics and compliance officer to deal with the systemic problems that Sarasota was dealing with. In October 2014, the mayor of Deerfield Beach was accused by the Brevard County Office of the Inspector General. Again, Brevard County was required to put an Inspector General in place because of their past transgressions. There were at least 5 counts of misuse of a position, including interference with code enforcement officers and interference with the purchasing director. Now, some of these may just be allegations, but you all are aware, and we emphasize this quite often in our training, it's the appearance of impropriety. It's the perception that's created by the accusation. The damages are already done. Our job is to try to get in front of these problems, give our folks the tools to avoid falling into those situations where it appears that they've created ethics issues for themselves. Even in 2015, the Delray Beach city manager described wrongdoing by his city employees as a systemic failure in city government when they uncovered that city employees were awarding city contracts to the employees' owned businesses. Major ethics violation. So despite the emphasis that continues to be placed on these issues, we continue to see these transgressions, which is why we need to stay vigilant and we need to stay aggressive in our response to providing the kind of ethics training and awareness that we think is important. Now, where is all that? Where are the rules and regulations for this coming from? We want to draw your attention to where the current ethic laws and policies are provided to us. Of course, the Florida Code of Ethics, Statute 112.311 through 326, is where the state law resides. Brevard County Code, Code Section 8215, also applies to us in dealing with various prohibited activities by county officials and employees. Brevard County's Conflict of Interest Policy, BCC 03, is also applicable, generally defines conflicts of interest, and covers conflicts related to outside employment, financial interest, and the solicitation and acceptance of gifts. The board's merit policies, under Merit Policy and Procedure 6, General Terms and Conditions of Employment, also applies when we're dealing with outside employment, employment of relatives, use of county property, conflicts of interest, political activities of employees, public relations, and release of information. And finally, the county's Code of Ethics and Business Conduct booklet, the Employee Handbook, provides an overview of all of these areas and is provided to all employees at new hire. Now, our organization's focus on ethics training initiatives begins right up front with new hire orientation. Employees are introduced to and provided a copy of the county's Code of Ethics and Business Conduct Handbook, the Employee Handbook. Next, as part of our employee development program, we've made that 3-hour interactive ethics training a mandatory class. This is the class I mentioned to you a little earlier. It's required training for all board employees. We've included an additional 3-hour ethics session as part of our Executive Leadership Institute training. And we've also incorporated several ethics questions as part of our employee engagement surveys so we can benchmark how we're perceived by employees as regards to how we're doing over time as an organization compared to those national survey results. Finally, we're very excited about this. We are implementing an online refresher training for all employees. It's been a product that's been in the works for several months now. I just received a final version of it from our software vendor this morning, so we're previewing it right now. We hope to be able to put this online as part of our Target Training Solutions program. It'll be a 30 to 40-minute interactive online ethics training program to provide annual refresher training, so we don't need to run everybody through multiple 3-hour classes year after year. So we're very excited about that as an opportunity for us. That covers what we've done organizationally. Now what I'd like to do is draw your attention at this point to a report from the Leroy Collins Institute at Florida State University. It was published in November of 2012. The report was titled, "Tough Choices, Florida Counties Bridge the Ethics Policy Gap." Now, this report outlines what other counties have done in the areas dealing with ethics policy, ethics enforcement, lobbying, campaign finance, and procurement. The data from this report is based on the survey of counties conducted in the fall of 2012. Brevard County was among the 45 counties out of Florida's 67 counties that responded to the surveys, and our information is included in the report's analysis. The data reported in the survey has not been updated by the Florida State authors since this was done. We've gone back online a few times and looked. This is one of a series of ethics reports that Leroy Collins is doing. The most recent report that they have produced involves campaign finance reform, also under the banner of ethics. So the data I'm going to show you is the best data we have with regard to surveying the counties and where they were at that point in time. Now, this first slide, I know it's hard in the room to see some of these slides. This is unfortunately what we're able to work with out of that report. But let me read you a little bit of what we're looking at here. 12 counties on this in this report reported having an ethics code that contains local regulations that were in addition to the state's requirements. They were writing codes that were more aggressive than the state code. Local governments are not allowed to utilize ethics policies that are weaker than Part 3 of Chapter 112 of the Florida statutes, but can adopt provisions that are tougher than state law. The additional requirements in the 12 counties having local ethics codes generally deal with more stringent practices for voting conflicts, gifts, and financial disclosures. The next question addressed in the survey had asked, has your county adopted an ordinance regarding voting conflicts for elected officials? Figure 2 of the report points out that 5 counties responded affirmatively, with Miami-Dade having the most comprehensive county-level voting conflicts policy. Individuals covered by this policy cannot enter into any contract or transact any business, with limited exceptions, in which he or she or a member of his or her family has a financial interest, direct or indirect, with the county or any person or agency acting for the county. Figure 3 shows us the counties of Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, and Duval have established their own local ethics enforcement agencies with added responsibilities beyond the Florida Commission on Ethics. 5 counties, Brevard, Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, Pinellas, and St. John's, have also put into place independent inspectors general as internal government watchdogs to investigate wasteful spending and public corruption. 21 counties responded to the survey indicating that they have a designated point person for ethics issues. The responses provided stated that county attorneys are most frequently utilized points of contact for ethics issues. Full-time ethics officers are on staff in Duval, Sarasota, and Miami-Dade County. Brevard County has, since this report, also designated the county attorney as our point person on ethics as a result of the 2013 presentation's recommendations. In the next slide, 60% of counties surveyed offered ethics training for elected officials. In 2013, the 2013 workshop that we put on for the board, Brevard County would be added to that list of authorities providing ethics training to their boards. Okay, let's see, did we just flip a sunlight there? All right, I'll try, what figure is that? I'm not having a hard time seeing that.
6.
That's 6? Okay. Okay. The third most cited local government policy topic in the survey response was restrictions on lobbyist gifts to county officials. More than half the responding counties, including Brevard, under the board's conflict of interest policy, have such restrictions. On this slide, 10 counties out of the 45 responding to the survey required lobbyist registrations. And at the time of the survey, only Leon County required lobbyists to report their compensation. Local campaign finance regulations were in place in only 3 counties at the time: Brevard, Miami-Dade, and Sarasota. Finally, the final frequently cited policy component at the county level, according to the survey, were local ordinances regulating procurement practices. 56% of county governments have adopted procurement practices that go beyond state law. Cone of silence policies that limit communications between prospective governmental contract bidders and local governments were mentioned frequently in the survey. Brevard County has a board-approved cone of silence statement that is included on all of our bid packages. Now, at the close of our 2013 presentation, several recommendations were made to the board and approved for implementation by staff. BCC 3 policy statement was updated and approved by the board in January 2014 to be the single document that would identify and reference all of the county's related ethics provisions in that one document. That updated BCC also formally designated the county attorney's office to act as the county's ethics officer, advising and counseling the board members and staff on ethics issues. The board directed that we continue to provide mandatory ethics training for all staff with refresher requirements. Now, since 2013 board workshop, we've provided, HR has provided between 10 and 12 ethics classes per year. In 2017, we have 12 ethics classes already scheduled. In fact, I did one as recently as yesterday afternoon. We've conducted annual ethics training in addition to those classes for employees for senior staff in an effort to provide a significant portion of the 4 hours of ethics training required for elected officials to the county manager's staff. The county manager's staff was not included in the Tallahassee policy. The county manager had directed that we expand that to include senior staff. Now, the last such program was held August 20 of 2016 at an expanded directors meeting where we had over 70 managers participating in the ethics refresher program, and we previewed at that time the online refresher training that I spoke about earlier. We're expected to have that final version of that training, with any luck, online and available on the street by March of this year. I'm hopeful for that. Commissioners, that brings us up to date regarding the ethics programs currently in place at the operational staff level. Public employees ethics has been and continues to be an area that garners a significant amount of our attention and training time as Brevard County strives to be proactive in an effort to minimize the potential for ethics violations occurring throughout the organization. I want to leave you with that and answer any questions you may have for staff. If not, we'll turn the program back over to Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Jerry. Great job. So, we have public comment. I have several cards here. Reverend Dennis.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today to speak on unprofessional conduct, which I call unethical.
Mr. Dennis, can you give us your name and your address, please?
Reverend Johnny B. Dennis, 3710 Catalina Drive, Cocoa, Florida.
Thank you.
Yes, as I stated, I'm here to speak about unprofessional conduct. I call it unethical. Okay, on the 23rd of January, I had a meeting with our District 1 County Commissioners. It's been 1 month. I haven't received a phone call, no text, no emails, no anything. And when our elected officials become entrenched and they started acting partisan, we would call this corruption, because I live in a Democratic community. Although we didn't vote for no Republicans, but an elected official should be nonpartisan in our community, in all communities. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
No, sir, you're welcome to call the office and make another appointment. We'd be glad to
You
see
changed your phone number. You didn't forward that either.
Oh, it's online? Ms.
No.
Marcia's right there. She has a card she'll give to you. We'd be
Who?
glad to give that to you. Marcia or Stephen.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Tom Unrath?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Pastor Tom Unrath, live at 1170 Ida Way, here nearby. My congregation is in Cocoa, the corner of US 1 and Michigan. So I guess I'm in Commissioner Barfield's district. I live in Commissioner Smith's district. What I've read and heard about regarding this ethics discussion seems to me, I'd be willing to be corrected, mostly about finances and the way things get spent or that kind of thing. And certainly that's a big concern. During my time as a chaplain in the Air Force, I worked my way up to a point where I was a fund custodian of some pretty substantial fund projects, and I am well aware of the ethics, but really more the legalities of handling funds. When I think of ethics, I think more generally in terms of doing the right thing. And I would suggest to you that as public officials, as elected government officials, the right thing is to take care of folks, the people that elected you. And I would submit to you that the best thing is to take care of those who are least able to take care of themselves. It seems in the public eye, at least the way things get discussed oftentimes, that the ethics issues that come out are those where it seems as though the ones with the larger wallet are looking to have an even fatter wallet, and that there's some assistance in seeing that happen. In all of my dealings with any of you, I've never had any sense that that has been the case. And I would ask of you to consider how whatever funds we collect to operate the county be used to find ways to help those to use the funds in ways that help the people least able to help themselves, not to better help those who can already take care of themselves. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's 3 minutes. We spoke for 30 seconds.
We spoke for 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
Oh, I got you. Anita Unrath.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and the rest of you. Anita Unrath, 1170 Ida Way, Melbourne, Florida. It's been almost 2 years now since I attended my first county commission meeting, and I have enjoyed being educated on what's going on in the county, becoming more involved, and enjoying working on behalf of the county on some projects. And in my almost 2 years, I have been very impressed with the openness of the doors for the county commissioners. When I've called, I've gotten an appointment, I've been able to talk to people, even people in the other districts, not just Commissioner Smith in my district, and I appreciate that. I have never seen any unethical behavior. I do not believe in public shaming. I don't like this idea that if one of the 5 elected commissioners now does something wrong, that it's going to be on a public agenda. I mean, all of us make mistakes. Bible tells us all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God.
Amen.
And I
Amen.
don't believe that that would help in any matter. I've listened to people support the idea of an IG, and I'm thinking, why? We aren't huge like Miami-Dade County or Pinellas County, and I think our county government runs very well. And I appreciate all the people in all the various departments where I've talked to people, natural resources, public works, various people in roads and sidewalks. I've talked to people in planning and all of that. And they've always been very helpful, very kind, very passionate about their work. And I would just like to tell whoever might be watching on TV this afternoon that our county government does work very well. And so it sounds like what you're doing for ethics training is wonderful. I'm a retired school teacher. We had to go through training also. So in order to have less government, I don't understand how making more rules is going to help anything run better, because I am very impressed with the way Brevard County is run, and I thank you for your service.
Thank you. Richard Charbonneau?
Richard Charbonneau, Satellite Beach. 2 meetings ago, the chairman of the commission said that we don't need any ethics because we have policies. And I looked up the difference between laws and policies, and I'm going to read it to you. Only take a second. And policies outline what a government is going to do and what it can achieve for society as a whole. Policies also mean what the government does not intend to do. Policies are only documents and not the law. They are policies that can lead to new laws. Laws are set standards, principles, and procedures that must be followed by society. Laws are mainly made for implementing justice in society. While laws are framed for bringing justice to society, a policy is framed for achieving certain goals. Laws are administered through courts, laws are enforceable, and policies are not. A law is more improper English. A law is improper format as it is a system of rules and guidelines. Oh, more of a format, okay. A policy is just informal and is just a statement or a document what is intended to be done in the future. My summary of this is that if everybody were an honest person, we wouldn't need any locks on any doors. And unfortunately, some of us are not honest, so we have locks on doors. If every one of us had common sense, we would drive 65 to 70 miles an hour up Route 95. But, there's 1% of us that would drive 95 on 95. So that's why we have laws. And to say that having laws is expanding upon the government, well, then fine, we'll do away with all laws and we'll have anarchy. I mean, this is just silliness, not to have laws. Laws to protect people from maybe the 1 or 2% that don't want to follow, what would be normal society's, honesty and ethics. And that's why we have laws. John Tobias wants to have some ethics that have some enforcement bite. Right now, we have policies. And as far as I know, the policies are not enforceable by anybody. So we could have, all the policies we want. I'm not sure the exact number, and anybody can jump in and correct me if I want, but a couple years ago, Mary Boland went on a trip to China and to Singapore and spent about $20,000. And it was hidden for several months. Trudy Infantini kept on asking for it and didn't get it. And I don't know if it was $20,000 or not, but it was a lot of money. But again, if it was $140,000, that's not enforceable.
Your time is up, sir.
Great.
Kim Rosanka?
Okay, before I forget, I have 5 minutes? Is that it? 3? Oh, my goodness. All right, then let me pass out something before I start. All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Kim Rosanka. I'm an attorney in town with the law firm of Cantwell and Goldman. I have been appointed to the Statewide Commission on Ethics by Governor Rick Scott back in December of 2015. I read about this workshop and decided it would be a good opportunity for me to come and talk a little bit about the Commission on Ethics, not realizing I was only going to have 3 minutes. I had provided materials to the county manager, 2 different booklets and 2 different handouts just in case you use them. I use this red handbook all of the time. In fact, I have it tabbed for the discussion later this afternoon. The Commission on Ethics is a 9-member commission with a staff of approximately 25 employees located in Tallahassee that serves as the guardian of the standards of conduct for officers and employees of Florida and its political subdivisions. It functions as an independent commission responsible for investigating and issuing public reports on complaints of breach of public trust by public officers and employees. It investigates sworn complaints, assigns penalties, and maintains a financial disclosure system of almost 39,000 reporting officials and employees. It also administers the executive branch lobbying registration system. It has a $3.6 million budget. This past year, it reviewed 220 complaints and 132 were investigated. It provides for penalties, the Commission, under Section 112.317, including disqualification from being on the ballot, impeachment, removal from office, suspension from employment without pay, demotion, forfeiture of salary up to 12 months, and civil penalties up to $10,000 per violation plus restitution. Since 1975, there have been a slew of penalties have been issued by the Commission, and I have a full report that I will give to Scott Knox as your point person, just for reference. We meet 8 times a year at the 1st District Court of Appeals. We have public and private agendas on Friday. The public agenda is televised. Press releases are issued the following Wednesday that talk about what was done at the Commission on Ethics and when probable cause was found. The website also provides information on training links, and training opportunities. The Commission staff can also come train in person. It has a very interesting history. It was one of the first Commission on Ethics that was ever established. The Code of Ethics is found in Chapter 112. It's intended to ensure that public officials conduct themselves independently and impartially, not using their office for private gain other than compensation provided by law. It is important to note that even if Brevard creates its own Commission on Ethics, the statewide Commission on Ethics will still have jurisdiction, which could result in double hearings and double penalties. I have provided a copy of the 2016 annual report. I only had 8 copies. It was quite a large report. It's available on the Commission on Ethics website, as does more information about the Commission on Ethics, what it did in 2006, and there are also legislative recommendations in that, which is part of the Commission on Ethics' responsibility, is to provide recommendations to the legislature. So obviously, if this board has something that it thinks the legislature should consider, I can assist with that too, if that would be helpful. Any questions?
Time is up.
All right, thank you.
Good timing. Jim Stone.
Trying to figure out how to get an hour into 15 or 3 minutes, isn't it? Y'all remember me from your last meeting that I was at, I hope, commissioners. First thing I want to say is I'm a depression baby, so I view the world different than most people. I didn't see anybody else here that qualifies as a depression baby. That's folks who live their own lives without big government. We sure got away from that. I did want to say a word about the folks in the field. I am totally impressed with everybody I meet in the field. I have absolutely nothing but praise for all of them. I don't care whether they're on the roads or all these other working environments. My problem with the county is management from the commission, how they allow the manager to do what he does without what I've ever seen as any true incentives for achievement other than keeping certain organizations in the county happy. And as you might tell, my experience with the county has been nothing but negative. It's cost me my life savings, and I'm not happy about it. I presented a year and a half ago a big paper showing why I was unhappy, and I have not seen any evidence that anyone in the county read it. I took a copy to today's newspaper, and after a week went over and said, hey, give it back. You're not obviously going to do anything with it either. It is conservative in approach, not liberal, so you don't want it. And I can go on and on about that. But my emphasis is, unless you come up with some incentives that truly look at what goes on in each department and make those incentives real so people have something to achieve. I'll give you an example. In the space business, our highest paid techs, that was the incentive, the money. And if they performed poorly, if they took risk, if they accepted unacceptable work, they never made that higher salary. We had the checks and balances in those systems where we had eyes, we had ears, and we had good communication. And I don't see that. For example, I went in for a development when my citrus grove floundered after Reagan eliminated all controls on citrus imports and the market went to hell in a handbasket. The only option I had for my land was to develop it. My first final review, I went in very enthusiastic, and this is going to be it. I can still make my 10% profit margin on that land. No. I had to go back and redo the engineering, redo the surveys, redo all the fees that were required. Second review, thought, okay, this will do it. Wrong. Third review, wrong. Fourth review, I thought I'm done. No, when they come out for the final inspection, two things. Sorry, Jimmy, we're going to take 8 lots out of your development because you have an easement in there.
Mr. Stone, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, okay. Any case, I'm probably still the only individual in the county that has my sidewalk bond in escrow because all of a sudden I was told, oh, you got to put in sidewalks. That's 4,000 feet. That's $40,000 minimum. Where'd that come from? There goes an entire lot that was my profit. But anyway, anybody in the county ever wants to talk to me about this, you've had my phone number over and over. Be happy to talk to you.
Thank you,
So
sir.
good luck to you. You got a tough job. It took us 50 years in aerospace to get that stuff down, but it worked.
Thank you. Pamela Sal.
Pamela Salviera. I wish I had been able to go through county government like Snow White, where every bird was singing and everything went well. But that was not my experience. My experience, I went up through management and then down through the commissioners and came to the conclusion we need independent oversight. And I'm the one who, a year ago, came to the conclusion and started moving for an inspector general in this county. Every county in the state that has an IG, they more than have them paid for by the work product that they create. I'm not a lobbyist. I will never be a lobbyist. And I have to wonder who comes before you trying to keep us from having ordinances which can be enforced, what motivation they might have. I pursued an ethics issue with the Ethics Commission and stopped dead cold in my tracks when I read the form that you fill out. The form that you fill out, even if it's out of your control, even if you have a strong complaint, even if they agree with you and pursue it, if they lose it, and it's out of your hand when it gets to them, if they lose it or it's dismissed, that person that you have filed the complaint against has the possibility to come and have the person who made the complaint pay for attorney's fees. Now, I'm sure a person, a politician possibly, I don't know if it would be any official, certainly has motivation to hire the best attorney possible, private attorney. And so I would think a lot of people who bother to read the form would stop dead in their tracks and not pursue that. Ethics would create sound choices for officials. It would make it a defined way for accountability. I just don't see any downside to making it concrete rules for us to know where we stand with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Martin.
Good afternoon, Melissa Martin from COCO. And I wanted to dovetail off of a couple comments that have already been spoken, both in the fact that my personal experiences have been very good and positive with county staff, county management in addressing issues and in following through with things. So thank you in general, and also Mr. Whitten for that. And also, I support Pam in some of the things that she says regarding a definite need to shore up certain procedural mandates, I think. And the tricky thing about ethics is that it's not only, there's not only two parts to it, the standards themselves and the processes, but it's also a graduated issue. It's, you know, you're not going to jail someone for pilfering printer paper for personal use, but, you know, you're also going to have to take serious some things, you know, if someone steers a contract to their buddy's way. So it's necessarily complex, and it deserves a complex structure. And from the public's point of view, it would be very nice if we could have some sort of website to provide not only a layman's term overview of what, you know, the BCC and things like that, the one-pager of what is this ethics thing, how does the county manage ethics, but also perhaps in some sort of interactive way of contacting someone to explore the issue, not necessarily to jump into reporting or complaining, but asking, hey, you know, I heard about this, what, you know, is this right, is this legal? You know, there's only a handful of people that can answer those questions. So I'm a process girl. I actually I did a similar job as Mr. Knox in my previous life. Only I had one boss, not five, and a lot of the necessary. Well, I would say the necessary process that went into a successful program, an ethics program, was not only the training, which is great, it sounds wonderful, but also maintaining an eye to the necessary transparency it takes to even see where there might be problems, to have a substantive, you know, investigative process and follow through. 30 seconds, thank you. Knowing that someone will look into it. That, I think, might be a huge gap of what the public sees as might not be happening right now. I don't know. I couldn't tell you for a fact. But also, the follow-through should end up in some reasonable and objectively fair result, both in the, you know, what process is due to the alleged offender and also on behalf of the public. So it should be noted, you know, how a complaint is processed somehow in some fashion. So at the bottom line, I would love to, like I said, of some sort of website that's very comprehensible to the layman, that can provide a go-to and follow through for all matters. Thanks.
Thank you. Barbara Gorin.
Hi, sorry I've got a cough drop in my mouth. Barbara Gorin, I live here in Vieira. And I just have a question. What is so wrong with enforcing ethics and strengthening ethics? Why would there be a question from anybody in here to strengthening ethics in Brevard County? That's my only comment. I just would appreciate honest answers from every one of you on why you don't want to go forward with what John has so gallantly proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Camille Tate.
Okay, you're at a podium. This is the mic.
Camille Tate, 2945 Kemblewick Drive, Melbourne, Florida. I'm just going to keep my remarks brief. I was at the meeting when Commissioner Tabaya introduced the ethics reforms, and one of the things I wanted to say was I was particularly interested in the one about the use of electronic devices. I was at a meeting last year where one of the commissioners was on his phone, and he was looking up the property taxes of people who were commenting against against the exceeding the tax cap that's in the charter. And while I think that was inappropriate, an inappropriate use of his electronic device, I personally don't see an issue if a commissioner is using their device. Maybe someone is speaking and they're trying to do some quick fact checking or something on their device. I personally don't see a problem with that. I think the issue should be what is the actual use of the electronic device and how it should be used if you're on the dais, doing the public's business. That, to me, is the most important part, not whether or not you're able to use your electronic device, but how you use it while doing your business to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Arlene Nolte.
I need to get...
Let's go. I'll wait for you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Arlene Nolte, 3924 South Wind Drive, West Melbourne. We're particularly interested in ethics, and the impression I got from your commissioners' meeting was that you have several documents from which you must draw what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. So I'm addressing my comments to that. I am suggesting that you have an ordinance, and I think you have a couple of other documents. When something comes up or you're studying an issue, how many pieces of paper do you have to go through that might even have conflicting statements? So my suggestion is that the Board of Commissioners work with the city attorney and, the county attorney and the county manager to define what they want to set forth and revise the ordinance, rescind the ordinance. I'm not quite sure how you do that, but I'd like to see a more congenial meeting of the minds. I was frankly disturbed by the interaction and the comments that were made at your last meeting. I think it would be more appropriate if you would please have some of those discussions off the floor. Obviously, you are not going to agree on everything, but there is an area of respect that I would like to see each of the commissioners extend to each other, unless it is absolutely unnecessary or impossible to do so. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. That's all the comments that we have under that topic. Okay, now we'll move into board ethics proposals. And I'm kind of lost here, Mr. Whitten. Where are we headed in this direction?
I think, Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, you've had several items, proposals submitted by various commissioners under this particular topic, and so I don't know if you want them to introduce their particular items, or I can try to introduce them, but I think it's probably better if individually they just present to you what's been presented under this particular
Okay,
item.
well, I'll go according to how they're in my book, and then If I miss somebody, just jump in. Okay, the first one I have is a proposal from Mr. Barfield. Would you like to introduce that?
Sure. I know there's talk, and we have one county commissioner who elected to move his office outside of his district. And I know how important it is to be close to your constituency. And if you tie even to the Brevard County's vision and their core values, accountability, openness, honesty, all of these are important. And when you have people in your community, it's nice to be able to have them close. So, and have access. So I brought this up. I think it's an ethical concern because it really comes down to being able to communicate with your constituency. And so I threw this in for discussion, that we require each county commissioner to have their office within their district. I just think it's very important. So.
Board comment?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Since, there's no doubt it's my commission district that is housed in here, I just wanted to ask, since you brought this board proposal up, a few questions, relating to the proposal, because I'm very happy that we're in this environment and we could ask this. Are you aware that when this complex was designed and built in approximately 1990, that it was intended as a tax savings method, to my understanding from staff, that all 5 county commission districts offices were to be located, actually the floor, from what I'm told, the floor below us?
I was aware of that,
okay.
Absolutely.
Are you familiar that there is no similar provision at the state, or, to my knowledge, what I did research, at the federal level pertaining to a similar law or statute to what you have proposed?
I don't think that applies, but no.
Okay. Are you familiar with the process of redistricting that happens every 10 years? Mm-hmm. So my question would be this. Our next redistricting will happen in 4 or 5 years. And I have no idea how that is going to go. I don't think any of us do, because of population shifts and all that good stuff. So are you aware that it potentially could be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars by moving, once we move the lines, even if we move them over, a mile or two, it potentially could cause all sorts of expenses, moving expenses, IT expenses, breaking potential leases due to the fact of redistricting, an unforeseen occurrence?
Well, actually what happens is, I can tell you right now, most of our offices have stayed in the same spot. I know at least where mine is for at least 20 years.
Well,
but see, here's the thing.
That would be factually incorrect. I believe there's 5 commissioners right now, and I believe 2 moved, and then I would be a third that moved. So factually, 3 of the 5 have changed, or I believe Commissioner Isnardi mentioned that she would be changing today. Mm-hmm. So on the record, 3 have changed.
Here's the point. It's the question of either, okay, do you want to be a long ways away from your constituency, be, 20 miles away and be in a county building, or do you want to be close to your constituency? If you have to move, now that happens, Mr. Whitten, how often is redistricting? Every 10 years?
10 years.
10 years. That's a chance to take. For 10 years, I just think it's more important that that our citizens have a right to get closer to you, to come in and talk. I mean, people come into my office all the time. I'm sure all of us do. But, and I want you to tell you this too, it's not geared at you. It brought up a point that I think it's something that needs to be put in the policy, that we do have our districts. We get as close as we can to our constituency. I think that's what we're here to do.
Okay. Further question. Thank you for that explanation. My intent, and I know you probably weren't aware because I didn't announce it, was the office that the previous commissioner had was a standalone office with quite a number of expenses that we looked up: maintenance expenses, power expenses, IT expenses, that I moved to Viera because there was existing space. You know, there was a nominal increase in air conditioning. My office staff likes to keep it way too hot in there, but nonetheless, it was a tax savings to the taxpayers of Brevard County. Not only that, it's my intention, I haven't got there yet because I'm stuck on ethics and CRAs, as you're probably well aware of, but you're probably familiar with selling county land. I read the paper. My intent would be to look at surplus and potentially take this property that's a great location. My office is located overlooking, the office that the previous commissioner had is overlooking the water. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's located in a park, and but to look at that and potentially auction that off, so not only can we get the resources available from the sale of that, but also the tax resources that would come with increased property tax. So the intent of moving the 18 or 19 miles was purely a tax-saving mechanism. One of the reasons why, or one of the reasons I promised the constituents when I ran, you know, I was here to save dollars, and I thought the first place to do that would be moving an office into something that had zero rent. And I pride you on your office. You know, I see that you're in a government building, and you know, those expenses aren't borne by you. But this would give me the opportunity for that same advantage. So knowing that, and that it is a savings, is that savings of potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, because for the sale of the property, is that worth it, putting in a policy knowing that?
Here's the point. It wouldn't be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe Mr. Witten or Mr. Knox could talk about the property is located right in the middle of, right next to City Park. You can't go out and sell stuff if it's right there next to it. You have to put it out, and normally what happens is, if I remember correctly, if it's government and they're next door, they get the first right of it, which means it wouldn't be on the tax rolls. Y'all feel free to step in.
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Knox talk about the sale, and I think that's an ordinance for us. One of the problems with that site is that we own the building, but we don't own the parking lot. And so the parking lot is actually owned by the Florida Department of Transportation with a lease to the county. So the potential problem with a sale to anybody is going to be that you have a building that doesn't have parking associated with the ownership of the building.
And out of curiosity, could that be solved? The person moving in there may not want that existing structure. So would there be a permitting issue, to your awareness, that if the person was interested in that land, that they could potentially put some sort of parking structure in that space?
Yeah, and I couldn't answer that. I think that's in the city of Melbourne, so that would be Melbourne codes there, but I couldn't answer that.
Thank you.
I have a question. So you're priding yourself on saving the dollars from moving from another property to here, but we're still paying the dollars to keep that property. And the other point I would like to make is, if the next commissioner that comes in 4 years or 8 years, depending on the situation, if they want to move back into their district and we don't have that property, now we're going to have to do the same thing that we've done for these two commissioners, or find them a property to buy. So I don't see where there's any real savings involved. That's one. Two, are you suggesting that you've done all this to save money? So are you inadvertently chastising your fellow commissioners over here that have chosen to move out of government buildings into separate offices, so that they feel that they can better represent their constituents?
Okay, first of all, I'm not priding myself on this. I made a campaign promise, and I believe when you run that, you know, a reflection of how well you do is keeping the promise. So certainly not pride. The IT expenses, to my knowledge, as well as the power expenses, would not be incurred. We've not gotten around to getting that far. Like I said, I mentioned I'm stuck on ethics stuff that, you know, I've had a number of hurdles with, as I'm sure you're aware of, as well as CRA stuff. So, you know, this is something down the road. I haven't been as proactive as Commissioner Barfield to look at the sale of public land. As far as chastising my fellow commissioners, absolutely not. That is a decision that they made. And if this better serves their constituents, you know, far be it from me to make that. And finally, it's come to my awareness that other county commissioners, and I don't know any of these fellow counties, but in the past, staff has had to travel great distances. Not just one or two people, but a large amount of staff has traveled to the county commission offices to hold meetings. And as you're well aware of, one of the advantages to being in the commission building is to be able to go up a couple floors of stairs and meet with the staff instead of having them to drive a great distance in order to sit down and discuss an issue when they could be doing the people's business instead of traveling back and forth.
Well, and that's a good point. I think the other point is that by being in this building, I'm convenienced, and fortunately, I'm in this building because this is in my district. The other side of the coin is you're convenienced by being in this building, but your constituents are inconvenienced because now they have to travel an extra 12 or 15 miles to get to you.
Have you received? I've received one. In full disclosure, I've received one.
I can't tell you off the top of my head, but we just had one yesterday that complained about a Mark Chances, and it's a public record. He lives in Melbourne Beach, and he went to your office, but you weren't there because your office isn't there anymore. And
well, first of all, it's never my office. You know,
well,
this is county.
The building that he has been your office, your district's office for a long time, and he went there assuming he was going to find you. And he called your office a couple of times and nobody answered. So he reached out to my office. So I can't tell you how many more. I don't know off the top of my head. But I view it as you're big on open government. Well, part of open government is representing and being available to your constituents. So if you've moved your office 12 miles away or whatever the distance is, that's not so open. And then I understand you have a lock on the door that people just can't come and go as they please. They have to, I don't know how they get in.
A lock, I'm sorry, a lock on what door?
On your office door.
Okay. Which, the county commission door?
Yes.
The one I currently occupy or the one prior?
No, the one
I was going to say, I hope there's one back there, but the one right
downstairs.
now. I think there's a lock on there, but Mr. Witten can speak to it. There's no special, is there a special lock on the door that I requested to be put there?
No special lock. Locked during the day when people normally can just walk in and see their commissioner.
Like we lock the door?
Yes.
To the best of my knowledge, that is not the case,
Okay,
unless
well,
you've gotten maybe
well,
you've
again,
gotten
I've
phone
had several
calls.
people that have tried to open your door and went to your door and the door was locked. So, you know, I'm just saying. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, you know, staff coming all the way to our office, technology is great. We've been using video conferencing ever since I've been here. It makes it so much easier because you don't have the travel, and it works really well. I'm sure others use it too. So we can have a meeting there in a room here, and we're there and get everything accomplished we need to.
Does technology also work with constituents picking up a phone and calling your office, or does that not work?
They email, but a lot of them want to come in face to face, which I appreciate.
Any other comments?
I just, you know, looking at this, and I see both arguments. I mean, I see both, you know, Commissioner Tobias' defense because he is saving money. However, I understand my motivation was different. But, each commissioner is tasked with representing their district. So, I took some heat for the small expense of me moving the office from a government building to make it more convenient for residents to come and see me, but I understood that going in. So I'll take the heat for that because I believe that's important. But at the same time, I'm accountable to my constituents. So if Commissioner Tobias moves his office here, a constituent in his district could just as easily say, well, that's smart business. That courthouse, because I've heard the same thing, that courthouse was designed to hold those commissioners there. So everybody's in central one location. I mean, municipalities, the city of Palm Bay did that when they utilized the big expansion that everybody got mad at us for building the City Hall Annex, was to move all of those departments in one central location. So it did inconvenience people in the north part of the city who had to go for their building permits all the way down to the southern part of Palm Bay. So, again, our districts are really horrifically drawn, which I think makes it interesting. I mean, I think it's terrible the way that they're drawn, and I understand the dynamics and the politics behind redistricting, and I remember the bit of a nightmare that board went through last time, but, to each his own. I can't criticize because, again, you could find fault with what I did as well. Where someone will praise me for the decision I made, like some of my constituents in Lockmar, they're already planning meetings and I'm not even over there yet because I'm right around the corner. Where others are going, well, I can't believe we've got to pay. I don't care how cheap your rent is. I can't believe we have to pay rent. But meanwhile, most of the traffic, it is about location, because most of the traffic that comes to my office right now, if they can find my office, are people going to the Department of Motor Vehicles, or people looking to get background checks. So you can imagine the walk-in traffic that we get. And it interrupts my staff and their time, too. And also, to the benefit, and this is not related to Commissioner Tobias, but just so the public is aware, the benefit to me moving the office, there was a shift for all of us. Commissioner Tobias moves to the Vieira Courthouse. The sheriff moves some of his people. We're now able to do, or we're going to be able to do tags so people don't have to come to Vieira for animal license tags. I mean, they're itching to get in there, but at least it's serving a general purpose where, so again, pros and cons to both. I understand both arguments, but I'm not going to tell Commissioner Tobias where he's got to move. I don't think that that's my place. I've had, like I said, I've had people argue both. People say, I've had people come up to me and praise me, and I've had other people say, what the heck is he thinking? So I can't say for certain what the right answer is. I know that he knows his district, he knows who he's representing, and he has to make that decision for himself.
And if I wasn't very clear, I apologize. If this is the discretion of the board, the reason I ask those questions, I want you aware of the fact that if we go in this direction and this is put in ordinance, you better believe I'm going to follow it, but I want an understanding of the dominoes that will fall. You better believe as soon as I can get staff to help with the move, I will move. In fact, the first thing I'll do is ask again to municipal offices in the area, can I find some space? You would not believe how hard it was to find space in here. So I'm not arguing against your proposal. I am just laying out all of the necessary facts that would put question marks on it. But if this is the discretion, I will gladly drive. It's closer to where I live. It's closer to where many of my staff lives. And I drive a Prius, I will drive in here to meet with Stockton and Mr. Knox, and you won't hear one complaint from me. And I'm not complaining on the other side of your ordinance. We've been on the other sides of many things. I'm not on the other side of this. I'm just laying out the facts. So if that's the discretion of the board, in fact, probably, if we come out of this and I get 4 votes that we need to put this in here, you'll probably see, when it comes to the board, it unanimous. Because I'm not against this. My intent was savings. If you think that, and the board thinks that this transparency supersedes that, and I would disagree on the transparency aspect of it, because I think, we're pretty transparent and accessible. Like I said, I would be the fifth vote on that one. So I did not mean to be confrontational. I just wanted to ask the question.
I've even had residents criticize the fact that we have that office on the water. Have you ever heard that complaint?
I did.
And I used to, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody who used to sit on this commission by any means, but I used to get that so-and-so claims to be such a fiscal conservative as they sit in their office on the water. I don't know how many times I heard that. Now, I personally wouldn't say that. That's the building that was there when she started, so I don't ever criticize her, but just as a thought.
Well, you've been a public servant long enough to know that no matter what you say or what you do, there's going to be people that just don't. And the people that don't like you personally, they're going to take every opportunity to take a pot shot.
And that was exactly
Even
my
if you
point.
did what they like you, they'll take exception to it. So that's neither here nor there.
You don't hear from them when they're
My
happy.
thoughts were, as yours, when I heard you were moving, I thought, well, it's odd because you're not going to be in your district, where you guys were keen on moving into being more accessible. But again, like you mentioned, it's his district. If he wants to irritate his constituents, that's his call.
Or not. There may be some people that think
clearly,
it's
I irritate a lot of them. There's no ifs, ands, or doubts about every vote I make.
But the other side of the coin is, my opinion, for what it's worth, which maybe with a bag of potato chips, I could get half a sandwich or something. But my opinion is that you're not serving your constituents, and you're so big on, as we all are, but you're very vocal about it, your openness in government and your ethics. I just find it odd that if you want to serve your constituents and your focus is conserving your constituents, why have you made yourself more difficult to access?
Again, I ran as a fiscal conservative, as you did. I ran that I was going to do something.
So do you have an estimate of how much you think you're saving the county? Because the county still owns the building, so...
Again, listen, if I would have had better luck dealing, I haven't had the luxury of being a county commissioner for 2 years. I haven't, I made a lot of promises.
A luxury?
And, yeah. I made a lot of promises when I ran, and, I haven't had the opportunity. My goal is to put something on, as you saw today, and was tabled, dealing with CRAs, to deal with one agenda item. That's what my goal is, each and every county commission, and I haven't gotten the surplus. I haven't gotten to the EDC type things. I haven't gotten to the EDC.
That wasn't the question. How much are you saving by being here rather than in that building?
Currently?
Yeah, that's your motivation to move here.
The motivation is the motivation is, we maintain that building. I mean, the landscaping is wonderful there. Recently, I saw workers on a roof a little while ago. My goal, and again, I haven't been as proactive dealing with getting rid of public lands yet. I'm just not there yet. I apologize. My resolutions are not doing so well when it comes to reforming government. But I haven't got there in order to take that and other things off of the public role.
Well, I would just think that as diligent as you are at research, that you would have assessed that there is a dollar value for you being here rather than there.
I've asked that question of property appraiser and county staff multiple times. What is the value of that? And my office has. Sarah's asked that question. And I'm sure they've tried to estimate that, but they haven't. And the best response I got was to go out and, get an appraiser to do it. But I haven't.
So basically what you're telling me is that it just seemed like a good idea, so impulsively you just moved into the county building.
If that sells for $1 and someone builds something in there, then that's a $1 savings on rent, plus the increased tax value that we would get from that place. So no, it's not. It's you better believe that, when we get there and if we can get stuff.
But how do you if, and this is the big if, and you guys, if you pay attention to me, you know I have a definition for if that I will not repeat here, because it caused quite a stir last time I did that. But if you were to sell that building, everything's an if. And so what you're telling me is that you're fiscal conservative, that it's important to save money, that we may, if we sold that property, but here's another if. If we don't sell the property, and if you don't get reelected next time, we got to put somebody else in that building, or we have another.
I'm with you, but unlike fellow county commissioners, I can't go out there and say I've got 3 votes in order to sell a piece of property. I just, I can't do that.
Okay, but you still haven't given me an idea on what you think you're saving. You're telling me you're saving all this money, and you haven't given me a number.
Again, I've asked staff and I've asked the property appraiser, and for many reasons that have been brought up here, I can't tell you what it's going to come up at auction. If you want to discuss
that's not
that,
what I'm asking.
if you want to,
if the building doesn't get sold, because I wouldn't advocate for selling the building, because when you're gone, somebody else is going to go in there, or they're going to have to find another place at a greater expense for whatever you can sell that for or whatever you can rent that for. If you have to replace a facility in your district to put the commissioner, that's probably going to be
there's
more.
public buildings that space could be appropriated.
So then why didn't you move there instead of here?
In order to, we made some phone calls and from some of the municipalities, there was going to be some free space, but it would have taken a little bit of time, and we wanted to hit the ground running, and there was space available here, and we jumped right on that.
Okay. Well.
But again, like I said, if this is the discretion of the, if that's the discretion of the board, I'm not on the other end. I will move. I just want the understanding that, everything that I did met the, ran through staff, got the okay for everything that took place. But if this does go through, there will be costs incurred, and potential moving here in a few years when it comes to redistricting, and if that's the idea of the prevalence of the board.
Yeah, and I would like to touch on the redistricting thing too, because the building originally was dedicated to put all the commissioners here, but it was determined early on that the commissioners should be in their districts. And
I couldn't find that. Where did you find that?
I've just gotten that from people that have been in the county for a long time.
You want to be a little more specific than that? I heard it in the wind.
I can't be.
Okay.
I haven't seen it in any paperwork. But how did it just happen then? Somebody made the decision because the commissioners are all in their districts. So you can't deny that somebody made the decision somewhere along the line. So if I can't produce paperwork, that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
You said you spoke with people, and I asked, who did you speak with?
Well,
and then you said, I don't,
in conversation with people over the 2 years or 3 years I've been
and I asked
working.
which people, and you're not answering.
Well,
which is fine,
yeah,
but...
Yeah, I'm not going to answer because I can't tell you right off the top of my head. I'm just making it up. Okay? Is that better?
That's a fair question.
Okay. I just made it up. So they just happen to wind up in the districts that they're in because nobody made the decision. But the fact is that every commissioner for the last 25 years or so has been in their district. Now, there's a reason for that. And the reason is, simply put, that they would have, the constituents would have access to their commissioner. If that's not important to you, not important to me, you can stay there. You can stay here. I don't care where you go. You're the guy that's going to ultimately respond to your constituents and they to you. So if they're happy with you being here behind locked doors, I'm good with that. Any other conversation?
Yes, sir. I want to give an overview of why I'm thinking what I'm thinking when we vote on this. I know I don't agree with everything we all do up here. Each one of you, there's a few things I've disagreed with. I do respect each one of you, and I believe that we've all been voted into our very best. I know I'm mimicking everything we feel. So as we're going through the ethics, I'm trying to determine as we look at these what's illegal or not legal, what is moral or immoral, what's right and what's wrong, and try to figure that out. And so, we have some of these things that are going to be preference, and I don't want to micromanage each of us. I think we're going to have to make decisions what's best to our constituents and our districts, and try to do what's best so we can govern what we have to do. I think each individual commissioner is going to have to search themselves and what they're doing and what they're leading forward with. My district, I couldn't pull this off. I have to be there, but I know my community very well, and they've just gotten used to having complete access to me. So, Mr. Tobias, I couldn't pull that off, but I'm thinking you found a way to manage your own district. I'm guessing. So I'm going to have to just have some confidence that you've got that part down. I don't know about the financial part of it. As an accountant, it kind of runs numbers with me, but we're real good at doing that anyway, so we're trying to convince each other of things as we're moving forward anyway. But I think I'm not going to vote in favor of this, but not because I don't have to do it in my own district, but just because I don't want to micromanage you or any of us as we're moving forward. I really do believe that each one of us are trying to do the very best we can for our constituents. And I hope as we move forward in this, we're really trying to find out what's really ethical and not ethical, and not put a bunch of burdens on us. I don't think that if you make a clerical error in your financials, you should be called unethical. I think it should be clerical and fix it. I think if you are trying to do your best to evaluate the property value of your home and you estimate it more or less, that shouldn't be an ethical issue. So I think there's some problems out there, even with the state of Florida, when they're putting ethics things on us that aren't fair. Because I believe we're all up here trying to do our very best, and I think that if we work together with that as a commission, we're going to get a lot of places farther down the road. So I'm not going to vote on this to go forward, and I just hope as we go through this, we don't make so many more laws and regulations that we're trying to figure out what we're doing and just be concerned we're going to make a mistake and not know we're making one. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, I did what I wanted to accomplish. I got discussion, a lot of it.
All righty then.
Do you want to take because she says it's still, there could be 3, and I'm not going to vote on this if it ends up 3 to 1. I'd be glad to move my office if you think it's that much of a concern. Honestly, I just I think if you want to move forward with it, I'm good with it.
No, I'm fine solling you. If that's what you want to do.
Okay, moving right along. The next thing up I have is Commissioner Pritchett.
Yes, sir.
You have a travel policy that you would like to discuss.
Yeah, I went through some of the ethics things that we were having discussions with the other evening. I pulled out a couple of items that I thought really needed some work on. And the one that I did is I feel like the Board of County Commissioners, we have to do a lot of travel around the state. But I was thinking if you get to where we're traveling out of state, it's going to be more costly. And I threw this into part of the policy because it wasn't, so that if one of us are going to travel out of state, that it would require a majority vote to do so, and then there'd be more transparency on those types of items. So this is just something I brought forth that I thought it's something we definitely should have in place in policy.
Comments from the board?
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I got really excited when I saw this.
I don't have a little button here with lights on it, so.
I got excited when I saw this, and again, I'm a creature of old habit, and I always thought that we brought the items to the workshop, because a workshop is sort of a moving, working product, so next time I'll be sure to give you guys some information beforehand. But this was something that I introduced at the City of Palm Bay, and we actually used to have all of our travel on the agenda. Now, mind you, it gave staff a bit of a headache because everybody had to justify their travel, but when economic times are rough, you should have to justify your travel. We were sending people to Australia, we were paying for trips to Australia, to Toronto, and I mean, we're not a financially wealthy city, but anyway, they no longer have that on their agenda, by the way, which I give them a hard time about that because I'm not sure who had that removed, but I'm not going to go there. But I was happy to see this, and I would have to agree, any travel out of state, or even if we added a $1 threshold along with that, because you could potentially travel to the West Coast and have a a hotel room is $150 a night. If you were there for 3 nights, and with per diem and everything, those costs could be higher. So perhaps my addition to that would be, or my input to that would be a dollar threshold for travel, like travel out of state or above, whatever amount the board agrees on.
I think we have to stay within the federal rates or whatever they are, or government rate.
Mr. Whitten, would you like to?
But it's for reporting purposes more so, too. You know what I mean? I guess transparency purposes.
Yeah, and just to clarify the travel approval process, when you all develop the budget, or approve the budget, review and approve the budget each year, there's a travel listing for each department, including the Board of County Commissioners. And so the policy is right now that if the travel is approved within the approval of the budget, and there's a listing of trips that you are proposing to take, and it's approved, doesn't have to come back to the board unless it exceeds, I think, 20% of the projected or the approved amount. So if it's $100 travel, if it turns out to be $121, it comes back to the board. And so this just simply clarifies that, which had never been clarified before, that if you're going to travel out of state, then that comes to the Board of County Commissioners if it's not previously approved in the budget. Because the second part says travel guidelines outlined in AO 21 also apply to the board. Well, that's where you get your per diem. The board sets the per diem, the mileage reimbursements, those sort of things. The process is sort of outlined in AO 21. But again, each year, all of the travel for the county is approved within the budget. If it exceeds 20% of those projected amounts, it comes back to the board via the bill folder. So I think this properly clarifies that you all have the same travel rules as regular county employees.
Can I just, I mean, I don't mean to keep talking. And I appreciate that, but I think at least my input or my take on this is transparency. So I think that although it's in the budget and the staff is doing their job by including it as part of the budget approval process, it often gets lost on where and what we're doing. And if our goal, at least my goal with this travel policy and my input would be, is to have that transparency. So I don't know if the solution is, I mean, I don't know that you want to reserve, or I doubt that you would want us to take that out of the budget approval process, but I do think that it should come back to the public forum. And I guess, again, I'm guilty of being at a city where for a long time travel was abused. So I think that that's sort of, that's my history, and I'm not saying that that's what's happening here, but that gives me some level of comfort to know
Mr. Whitten,
that.
it is public record, is it not?
But who's going to go back in a budget approval?
Well, so what are you suggesting? If one of us takes a trip, and I don't know, how would you govern how much is acceptable to spend?
Well, that's why we're having the discussion. If it goes over a certain amount, you have to have board approval, because the idea is, for me at least, is transparency,
I'm with
and
you.
it does get
My
abused.
question is, how do you know when you've reached that threshold? What is the threshold? Who's going to decide what the threshold is?
We are.
Okay. So how do we do that?
Well, we ask for each other's input. I mean, that's not...
On each and every trip, or now?
No, I would say on each, like, as a policy, say anything over X amount of dollars.
For an occurrence, for like going away for a week?
Yeah, for one occurrence, for one trip.
Like if you're gone for a week and you're staying in a hotel
If the county's going to pay for it, if it's on your own dime, then I personally don't, myself, I don't care. Even if it is county business, then if you're paying for it, and I've done it, I've paid for conferences before on my dime because it was, I understood the city was broke. But however, if we're going to ask the county to pay for it, then I think that we should have to approve it if it's over a certain dollar amount, because we have to see if it's of benefit to our constituents.
I'm with you. I'm just asking. I don't know how you would reach that. How do you reach the dollar amount that triggers? I don't know.
What if you do anything over like $500 for one project, that it would just be mentioned at the commission and we would just or 1,000? I don't know. I don't know what y'all spend.
I
I've
would
never
say
done it.
500 would be, as,
I don't know, I took
Would be the
some trips
minimum.
last year, and for the record, if I never traveled again, I'd be happy. But I do it as part of the job. I signed on to do things in this job that I don't like doing.
but then the board would be better apt to decide if that's something that taxpayers should be paying for.
But overnight.
Yeah.
Well, then I would suggest that we use recent trips to get an idea what those trips are normally cost. Because I don't know how you would reach it. I don't know.
It's not hard. I mean, if you said anything over $500, I mean, it may not take a lot to hit that $500 because some of these conferences are, just the cost of the conference are several $100s. But at least the board could decide as a body whether it's a worthwhile benefit to the taxpayer that you as the chair go to this event. Because I can tell you, I've been to a lot of conferences, and maybe a couple of the workshops there were of any benefit to the taxpayer. The rest was socialization. It was dinners, lunches, chocolate parties. It was, you name it, that's just how it was. That was the reality.
A lot, like going to Washington, D.C. to meet with legislators or look at different...
That's very different.
It is, and it's expensive there. You can never get with them per diem, unfortunately. Sometimes you might get lucky. It depends if they're not meeting. But usually you want to be there at that time. So it's expensive. I kind of like, I mean, I don't know the answer to it. I do like this. I like it a lot. I think it's a good check and balance. I just don't know how do you look at that?
That's the only way I can think of. If you contacted the county manager's office and you said, okay, what's the average cost for the last 3 years to Washington, D.C., or the last 3 years to Colorado Springs, because they're the places that typically that we've been going. And we can put the rest, the idiocy, when somebody comes up with, well, symposium means to drink, and so everybody's going out there to get drunk. I mean, come on. That's imbecile, it's stupid.
Well, I wasn't suggesting that.
Well, I know
if that's
you
what
weren't,
you're
but
thinking.
it has been suggested.
Right.
So I don't even drink, number one. So to make those kinds of comments is irresponsible at best.
Yeah.
And
Well, you're not suggesting that I was making those comments.
No.
Okay, you're talking about, okay.
No.
Because I wasn't, and I would hope that you
No.
wouldn't
Nope,
relay it that
nope,
way.
nope,
Okay.
Nope. That's why I say that it would behoove us if we used some real travel expenses and look at them and say, well, this is reasonable, whether it's $200 or $800 or $450. I have no clue. That's why I'm asking
Places
you.
we do go routinely, like Washington, D.C. or Colorado
But then it gives you
Springs.
the opportunity to share with your constituents, too, that you're in Washington on their
That's out of
behalf.
state, so that would cover this.
Yeah, that would already be automatic
Okay,
because you
okay.
would be saying, I'm going to D.C. next month and I've got some meetings
Okay,
lined up.
so you're talking about in-state.
Because I don't think you'll find a commission that's going to not approve something like that, that's going to, if you're trying to
Well, now
work.
you've lost me. We're not talking about out-of-state trips? You're
No,
talking about
No,
in-state
she,
trips?
yeah.
She
no.
just wanted to add a...
I just
No.
wanted to add the
Oh.
added the
Well,
caveat of
again,
dollars. Because you could go,
$500, that's a lot for an in-state trip.
but it could be, because a conference is over $400 on average.
Really?
A conference fee for a 2 or 3 day conference. I'm just thinking of League of Cities, and the city is all I can go off of. And you throw in a hotel room, there's another $400 or $500. There's $1,000 just for your conference in your room.
So we could discuss
And
that.
that's within the state. And that's not the per diem or parking or anything else.
Well, if you guys can figure it out, I'm all for it.
Like Florida Association of Counties, usually I can drive there and back every day.
Yeah.
Unless it's so far I've been fortunate, that's the way I can do it. But, I don't put a
But if
number
you go
on
to
it.
Tallahassee and you're up
And
there
Tallahassee's another issue.
for several days and
Yeah.
We could discuss that and vote it through with the majority. We think
Right.
it's a good trip at that point.
Exactly.
Commissioner Pritchett, I wanted to thank you for bringing this forward. You probably saw that this was one of my proposals. I had a supermajority in there. You said majority, so I see you changed it. I've got no problem with that. I think that's probably a very good suggestion. As someone that usually ends up on the low side of the majority, I still think that that is a reasonable compromise to this. But let me tell you why this is important. I don't even think you realize why how important this is. And I've got to watch out because I was called an imbecile here, but one of my fellow county commissioners held up a bunch of policies. And the reason this is so important is because it is important that we put stuff in ordinance as opposed to policies. Policies are absolutely, utterly, and totally useless. Let me give you an example. Brevard County Policy BCC 92 went in place, approved December 21st, 2010, so it's still in place according to our county attorney. It says, now remember, one of the commissioners just said he went on a bunch of trips last year, and I've checked the agenda to see if anything came before, and I could not find anything. Let me read again, which I'll give to you here. Travel for elected officials shall be approved by the board prior to the date of travel. However, board members may travel without prior approval, and the travel is immediately acquired to support the commission legislative package in Tallahassee. I get that, but I don't think this commissioner traveled to Tallahassee, or its space initiative in D.C. Those are the only two exceptions. So in other words, if a commissioner traveled outside of D.C. or Tallahassee and did not, and they didn't come to the commission, they are in direct violation of a policy that Brevard County has in place. But as we've just said, policies do not have any enforcement. They don't have any penalties. So for you bringing this forward and putting in ordinance, I think it would prevent these type of violations that commissioners have admitted to in the past couple minutes.
Mr. Knox, can I ask you a question? Do policies not have consequences?
Generally speaking, a policy is a statement of the board as to what you would like to see. It's sort of a guideline. It's more than it is an ordinance. An ordinance has a legal effect, which is enforceable by courts, injunctions, or by a state attorney in the case of something that requires a fine. Not so with the policies.
Because Mr. Tobias brought up an interesting point. When I was asked to travel, I was doing so on behalf of the county. Nobody in the county told me I was violating any policy by going. This is the first time I've heard of that. So,
Ignorance of the law doesn't.
well, of course it doesn't. But at the same
You have
time,
9 attorneys at your disposal.
well, I don't ask him if I'm breaking a policy by coming to work and going to lunch 5 minutes early either, and there may be a policy of that. I mean, you just don't ask people, is everything I do and everything I think and everything I say covered by some policy that I have to worry about? I mean, really? I don't want to live that way. I mean, you can live that way, but I'm not paranoid. I don't live that way.
I'm not paranoid.
Well, you sure act like you're paranoid.
I just read a policy that you violated, and it's my fault.
Okay, well, I'm guilty.
Let me ask a question, Mr. Knox, because I think we learned, like this morning with the board appointments, we've had an ordinance that we didn't know about. We've been kind of messing with here lately, too. So as county commission, if we violate policy, and so my work, we do a policy handbook, and we kind of use that to legally maintain governance in my place of employment there. So I think it maintains that kind of ability. Now, if we broke this maliciously, couldn't someone turn us in for ethics problem with the state of Florida with Ms. Kim? She left.
For violating a policy?
Yeah.
No.
No? So county commission wouldn't be under any kind of legalities unless we make it an ordinance?
Right.
Right.
Because the policies can be waived and are frequently waived.
Got a lot of policies.
For example, you have a board operating procedure. It's a resolution that's 6 pages long and sets forth all the things you're supposed to do at a board meeting and all the things you can't do and can do. It's waived all the time.
Okay. I don't think it would be the intent of anybody up here to try to break policy or ordinances. So I listen to you guys on what you feel would be the appropriate thing to do. I think everybody up here is going to do their best, but I guess we're trying to make some type of guidelines for future.
Well, what I don't understand, if we approved it in the budget, didn't we approve it? I mean, so did we do anything wrong because we approved the budget?
Well, the budget is me. So, I mean, that's the process, you know, if you flip to, nobody reads the budget, unfortunately. If you flip to the budget pages, and we do a better job than most people, than a whole lot of people, because if you flip to the page, you not only will see travel, and you'll see the trips, you'll see the number of travelers, you'll see an estimate at the cost of the trip. We do that for capital outlay, also we do that for capital improvements there. And so the policy, the AO says that, and the budget policy says that if it's approved travel for the year, and if it goes over 20%, then it comes back to the board. 92 was something that and as well as I think I know the policies and procedures, you would have to, I'd fail that test too, because I've never looked back to 92, and it was probably written for specific travel occurrences, but the guide has always been 21, and it lacked some clarification of how the board was going to function under 21. And so, I'm thinking that this is talking about out-of-state travel. I think now you all have blended both in-county and out-of-county travel with the out-of-state travel. So I'm a little confused as to where you're going. If you feel like you need the thresholds are going to be difficult, Commissioner, because you guys have assignments to go over to the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council. You have assignments for the Florida Association. You don't have assignments, but we're all a part of the Florida Association of Counties there. And so the thresholds are going to be different. Obviously, if it's a trip around town, smaller threshold. If it's out of county, you go out of county up in the Panhandle, you're probably not coming back in the same day. So, you're going to have those different thresholds. I don't think you're going to have a one-size-fits-all if you're trying to put it into this policy that the Commissioner proposed for out-of-state travel. So I just need some clarification on where the focus is. Is it out-of-state, is it out-of-county, or is it both out-of-state and out-of-county?
I would say it's out of state or out of count. I mean, but the dollar threshold doesn't have to be so low that you would hit that dollar threshold by going to a capital Eastern Florida meeting on the others in Orlando. I mean, I wouldn't suggest that we go that low. Just a reasonable amount. I would say we make that, and it doesn't have to complicate things. It can be quite simple. This or this. It doesn't have to be and.
It's more than 2 nights away.
Can we just go with start with the proposal that was made? I thought it was ingenious. If you're we'll deal with I think the more egregious ones that our constituents may have issues with are not if we go to an association of county meetings in Alachua County. I think and not that to the best of my knowledge any of us have done this, but that we're out on a beach in Hawaii or doing something like that. That's the stuff that I think the public should have awareness to, and you captured it with simplicity by saying if you leave the state of Florida, it needs to come to a vote. So maybe we can we deal with your proposal just the way it is if you leave the state, and we'll come back at some point and deal with the in-state travel later. Maybe it's a threshold, maybe
Well, I just envision and I'm not saying it's even going to be this commission, but I envision us going to Tallahassee for a week, and you could easily go over $500 in expenses.
I get it, and I agree with you, but if we made that an ordinance right here, Tallahassee, thankfully, even though that you can get to Georgia faster than you can, Tallahassee, it would not be subject to this. If we went forward with your proposal.
Okay, and then maybe we can come back after we have a little time to think about it.
I think that would be absolutely great.
This would stop trips to China and...
Yeah.
Yes.
And can I bring up another issue, just because of the language that it reads here, and Policy 92, both say approved by the board, okay? And I think what Stockton's trying to say is when you do your budget and you approve a travel allowance that's X number of dollars, if you're fit within your travel allowance, the board has approved that travel allowance. So if you spend less than that going to wherever you're going to go, you had it approved by the board as far as the budget's concerned. Now, if you want it specifically to approve every trip, that's a different thing that we need to put in here. well, I think approval comes in a lot of different ways.
But you can approve a dollar amount for the budget and not commit those dollars as well. I mean, the management would have the option of committing those dollars based on a guesstimate of trips without, actually committing those dollars specific, because even if it's in the budget, you're going to have a commissioner that decides not to go, or one, maybe an extra commissioner goes to a given event. So, I mean, you could just approve a dollar amount that's the average of what the commission usually spends, so you're approving the budget for up to that dollar. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Or could we just say approval by the board in a regular county commission meeting?
Well, that's the point. If you want specific trips approved, then you have to make more specific language.
Yeah, in a regular meeting, I think.
But just to make sure that we reserve that funding, we want to make sure that we approve the budget with that average dollar amount, so there's funding in the budget for those trips.
Well, I'll tell you a real-life experience. Last year when I went to the Space Symposium, and I didn't drink, and I'll tell you, I'll just keep saying that over and over again, because the implication was stupid. Excuse me. But we stayed in a Best Western. Was it a Best Western? And I think it was $150 a night, and it was okay. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean. And it was about 15 miles away from the Broadmoor. One newspaper article said we stayed at the Broadmoor. Well, the Broadmoor was where the symposium was held, but we didn't stay there. We stayed 15 miles away in a Best Western. But here's the point I'm getting at. There was a real fancy place that had floor-to-ceiling fireplaces and just was really, really nice. They had antlers everywhere, big rooms. It was only $5 more a night. But we didn't stay there. You know why? Because we didn't want to give because it had a fancy name. It said something like a resort. It had a fancy name. It didn't say Best Western. It had a fancy name. And the last word in the name was resort. So we didn't want, I didn't care. I didn't have anything to do with the travel plans. But Linda Weatherman didn't want to put us in there because she didn't want to stir up the hornet's nest that we were staying in some resort. So for $5 less, we stayed 15 miles away in a Best Western. Having this, that'll eliminate that, because now we're going to approve the dollar number, as opposed to the name of the place that we stay. I like it.
I have just one comment about it, though. I heard what you said. If we're paying our own way, then we don't have to worry about any of this. But understand, we're still representing the county.
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be something, I would think, something about that, that...
See, but that would probably be more appropriate for a policy as opposed to an ordinance, because we could make it a board policy that you just report your travel, during even your business. I don't think you need approval from the board if it's on your dime to go to any event, because you're already elected by your constituency. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. Because why should you have to have 3 votes? Because what if...
No, and that's not what I was saying. There needs to be some way, I think somehow, to recognize that.
Yeah.
It's all something in writing. Okay, if you're going on your own, this is what you do.
Maybe, like I said, maybe just a policy, and you give the information during your report. Because you don't need approval to spend your own money. You're already the elected official, so you don't need permission from the other. Or I would think that you shouldn't have to ask permission from the board to go on your dime. So that would be more appropriate to me as a policy, and have the travel as part of an ordinance. So are you okay with moving that to an ordinance form? Okay, good.
I have no problems following it.
Are we moving the current language or?
The language with the direction that it has to come before the board at a regular scheduled meeting, is that what we agreed on? Okay, I would be in support of that. I mean, do we have 3? Because obviously I don't want you to send you up there when it's no fun to be on the short end of the stick as someone that knows.
I believe we're all in agreement. We want to abide by this anyway, so whatever we do to give our constituents comfort that that's our intent, I think is a good thing.
So can we just direct staff to come up with...
Can I, two things, because I won't be here, so I'm trying to make life easier for, I think, Frank, who's going to be the interim prior to you getting somebody, and Vanetta and everybody else that's going to be here. part of that, oh, I won't even go there, but let me just try. So out of state and out of county travel.
No, just out of state.
Out of state travel by members of the Board of County Commissioners must be approved in advance by a majority of county commissioners at a regular and/or special meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, regardless of whether or not the BOCC has approved the travel during the development of the fiscal year budget.
I would change that to provided that it's within the budget that has been set aside.
I agree.
And strike the last part that you put in there, Stockton.
I think in here, we also need to, Board of County Commissions, out-of-state travel, we need to put in there if it's funded by the county. Also, I don't believe that terminology is in there.
I'll bring something back to you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I just ask,
Now,
Scott?
that's an ordinance. Are we making a complete ordinance with other in there, or is this just that?
I think you got to wait until you guys see whether or not you're going to have other items there.
Okay.
But, I mean, I'll work with Scott on the travel language.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is Commissioner Pritchett's as well. Lobbyist registration.
Yes, sir. This is, we had the discussion that one night, and it ended up getting denied. So I did bring back one. I actually took Commissioner Tobias' ordinance that he brought through, and I did some work on it, and I got it into an ordinance that I'm very comfortable with. And it's just as simple as if somebody is their primary purpose is lobbying, and I talked to Mr. Witten about this and the county about cost, they could actually just go submit a form, and I actually used the same form Mr. Tobias used. They submit this, they get registered with the county, they're put on the county webpage so that any citizen can go and look and see who the primary lobbyists are. They put on there who they represent, so we have the transparency moving along, and we find out who the lobbyist is, and it's that simple. They have a time period to register, and if they don't, there is a fine that will be, they'll have to pay it for every time they violate it by meeting with any of us until they go and register. But I thought it was a good start for getting something in the county till we figure out what's coming down from the state of Florida and everything. So I think this opens up the transparency thing we were discussing the other night, but it makes it very, very simple. If y'all read through it, my feelings won't be hurt if you...
Comments from the board?
I did read through it, and I thank you. My concern, and I'm good with the definition here, but, and I shouldn't say but, you define what a lobbyist is, but we spent a lot of time talking what a lobbyist wasn't, and you did not include that. You'd rather not have that? And I'm good either way, but, that was an issue. And may or may not an issue. It's just something that I took down those suggestions that, the board, as well as a couple speakers, brought forward and incorporated in that definition. My second point is, after my ordinance didn't make it through, the Florida House has taken this up as an issue, and on the 14th of this month, they passed, including my current representative, Randy Fine, PCB 03 and PCB 04. And it is ethics reform for local offices. Now, there's a list of about 7 or 8 things, but one of them, and this happened after I brought mine forward, and I had no idea that was coming to fruition, was a database. So of the exact same things that were in my form, except it was a searchable database. And to make it even better, PCB which one was it? 03, I think, created a trust fund to be able to manage the database, so that counties would not be responsible for funding that. It was unanimously supported. The Florida Association of Counties, the Florida Association of Cities, both stood up and spoke in favor of it. And I have no idea if this is going to make it through the process, but it's something to be aware of that may be coming down from Tallahassee, where if we do go forward with this, and I have no problem with doing this in the meantime, but we may have to, transition over to something, even though it's the same information, just something a little more user-friendly for our constituents.
Okay, I was just trying to figure it out. When we start this conversation, I've only been able to identify 2 people I know that are lobbyists. So I thought this would be simple for starting out. Maybe we'll have to change it if it gets more complexity to it. But I thought this was a good start, very simple, no cost, and really no time. So, the reason why I removed what a lobbyist wasn't, I think once Commissioner Isn't already put primary purpose in there. I started wrapping my head around that definition. It was able to get in here. This made sense to me, and it made it so simple. So if y'all are good with that, I thought this became a very simple piece of paper. So
I like it. I
good.
like it. I think simple.
Simple is good.
Yeah.
Simple. I'm a Republican. Less rules, less paperwork. Let's just make it simple. I'd like to get some public comment. I have a card from Kim Rozenka. Would you like to speak? And you have 5 minutes this time.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon again. Kim Rozenka with the law firm of Cantwell and Goldman in Cocoa, Florida. As you know, I often appear before you in Planning and Zoning Board and Board of Adjustment, have for about 15 years. I have no problem registering as a lobbyist, but I am not clear on the definition, and that's only because we have 2 different definitions in this red book that I deal with daily. And so that's why I'm not daily, every month, every 6 weeks. 112.3148, it's on page 40. It has a definition of lobbyist, and it says, means any natural person who for compensation seeks to influence the governmental decision-making of a reporting individual or procurement employee or his or her agency, or seeks to encourage the passage, defeat, or modification of any proposal or recommendation by the reporting agency. And then also in 112.3215, page 71, it has a definition of lobbies. And lobbies means seeking on behalf of another person to influence an agency with respect to a decision of the agency in the area of policy or procurement or an attempt to attain the goodwill of an agency official or employee. So I kind of think that's what I do sometimes with you all. I think I'm educating, but it could be falling under this. But your definition is one of 2 things: influencing public officials, and especially members of a legislative body, on legislation. Generally, I'm appearing in quasi-judicial mode, so I'm not really in legislation, but it's confusing to me as to when this would apply, because I do come before you for legislation sometimes, but I'm not what I consider a lobbyist. I work for clients. I'm an attorney. I might be before you 5 times a year, 6 times a year, and I might only represent that client for 3 or 4 months. So if I have to fill out one of these forms every time I'm coming before you, I'm not sure if that's your intent. So that's my only concern as to, does it apply to me? I have no problem registering if it does. I just need to understand if I apply.
I might need some help with that then, because when I put this together, you weren't in the category what I was put together, because I think of you as legal.
Okay, and I didn't think
So
I was, but I
might
couldn't
need some
tell
help.
because,
Okay.
you have 10 lawyers lead this, and you'll get 10 different definitions. So I was just concerned about that, and also, too, you might want to have a provision for withdrawal, because sometimes lobbyists change. And so if I were to put in one of these forms because I'm lobbying and I no longer represent that person, just like I send a termination letter, I would want to be able to withdraw it. So those are my only comments. I have no problem with that. I think it's a great idea. I just don't know if I apply. So that was my concern. And I asked that maybe you might be able to look to these definitions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Rozenka, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
I'm a little confused, too, having read both of these.
We're confused at the Commission on Ethics all the time, believe me. We argue about these.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm in good company.
Yeah.
But my point is, would you be able to, I guess we could rely on our own county attorneys to come up with a definition that lobbyists and people are comfortable
I think you should
with.
be able to guide you, because you really don't want to be inconsistent with the state law. Then it causes even more confusion.
Yeah, okay.
But if your intent is for someone who lobbies for waste management to lobby, that's clear. I just not sure if I'm lobbying or not. And in fact, whatever I do is all in the public record. I'm on the application, I'm on emails, I'm on staff reports. So people know what I'm doing, but people might not know what true lobbyists are doing.
Mr. Knox, could you help with that?
I sure could help you out. Lawyers lobby too, by the way, so that you have to be careful about saying that lawyers
We always have
are
to be careful of lawyers.
exempt. Because if they're meeting with individual commissioners, they're usually lobbying. They're not engaged in public domain presentations and things like that. And I think we had an exclusion for appearing before the board in the last version of this that came out. So, we can go back to something like that, or we can just take what they said.
And I think that when someone is hired for their primary purpose of having a discussion with you regarding, I hate to say Walmart for lack of not thinking of something better to say.
XYZ company.
But if somebody comes to me and says, I need to meet with you with my client Walmart, and they were hired by Walmart as the primary function to lobby, that defines you as a lobbyist, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think maybe the word we need to put in here is individual commissioners, as opposed to the collegial body appearing before them and saying,
Okay.
we want Walmart to have a rezoning of something or other.
Right.
So we can work on it.
I also have a card from Pam LaSalle. And you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Pam LaSalle, Vieira. I wasn't sure about how the cards were filled out today, about speaking on these issues, but I'm not a lawyer, and much to my mother's chagrin, but I did go and I looked up the ordinances for Palm Beach and Brevard County on lobbying, and they have a lot of detail, and I know y'all don't like long documents, but they're about 6 pages cover the lobbyists, and there's so many more details and I think issues. Are y'all going to actually pass what is proposed today, or is this going to be up to be worked out and get better? I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but this document's not very elegant. A lot's not covered. And other than having y'all do more research, I couldn't cover in 5 minutes reading all of this to you. And for instance, just quick notes here on what is actually going to be put down for the registration. It left out such things that other counties consider relevant, such as the name of official lobbied, the name of the persons in the meeting, all persons, the date and time of the meeting, location of the meeting, mode of communication, and specific subject matter. My concern is that y'all need, that chart that has the citizen on top and y'all are our employees, and then y'all go down to the county. As a boss, I would say, I'm not satisfied with your work product. Y'all need to go back and start over. And I can't possibly, discussing who's a lobbyist, there's a lot that y'all should be putting in here about who isn't a lobbyist details. And I don't think just, as a citizen who goes to a lot of meetings, I have some concerns about people being lobbied that y'all depend on for recommendations, and I don't think that that's covered in here. I'd be happy to leave this with someone's staff, but I would think y'all could have looked it up, or the county attorney could have looked it up, what other counties have already put in place. Thanks. Would y'all like that? Would anybody like these? Because I've got copies.
I think we have them all.
Okay. You just didn't put it in what you wrote.
We weren't trying to complicate things. We were trying to make it simpler.
Well, but there's so much left that's not clear. If you leave things out, that leaves for a lot of gray areas that people are concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, pleasure of the board on this. Do we want to direct staff to put something together?
Yes, please. Mr. Knox and Mr. Whitten, if you would kind of tweak out all the things we discussed here. And
Yeah, I think this is a great start. I think that, this will just direct, hopefully, us to begin the discussion, to advertise. So this will give us weeks in order to take suggestions to make this document better. It's got to start somewhere, and I'm very happy we've started the discussion. But I think we all agree that this is just a first draft, and I admire you for taking the stand on that first draft.
Okay, so we good there?
We're good.
Okay. Okay, the next... Are we having fun? Okay. The next proposal is Commissioner Tobias' ethics violation proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was mentioned that ethics violations don't happen in Brevard County, and I'm very certain they do, because I had an ethics violation that made probable cause, and the Florida House deemed when I listed a loan on a 2008 Toyota Prius back in the day and forgot to list the asset of the Prius. I did it for 3 years. I forgot to do it. But Florida House Rule Section 18, or Rule 18, Section E said that when that violation does occur, and I was fined $500, and I quickly paid my $500. It was an honest mistake, but mistake nonetheless. But it was published in the minutes, and I think that for full disclosure, I don't think people check the Commission on Ethics webpage on a daily basis. So I think it makes sense if this does come to fruition, and I hope, as you said, that these things don't happen in Brevard County, but should they, I think that the public should have access to that in our meeting minutes instead of having to search the various databases wherever they occur in Tallahassee. So that's all that this agenda item says, is if you get, as soon as the violation becomes public record, then it must go on the agenda.
And that's what, do you mind me asking a quick question? Is that for people who are found in violation and then ultimately the violation is found to be, it's not just people who file complaints, it's for a violation that's actually occurred that they found credible?
Correct. And as soon as it becomes public record, because a great deal of time it's not public record, and obviously we value the sanctity of privacy, but as soon as that violation has occurred and it's been adjudicated, then it would become public record the exact same way that it's handled at other levels of government. Now, we're not saying that the newspaper won't, find it and publish it, but I think that, we should provide that as a level of transparency here.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely. This is what we're here for.
The state of Florida, I know you worked in there, and it really bothers me that you could make an error like that, which I think it's not intentional, and it's really not, it's not illegal. And I wish they would differentiate, like you made a clerical error for forgetting to acknowledge something, whereas you did something with an intent to mislead the public. So that's the only concern I have, is that if you do something like that it makes it sound like you did something terrible, and you didn't. You're not a bad guy, you just made an error. It'd be like, if you're trying to, I was trying to fill mine out a while ago and try to make the best decision I could make in what's the fair market value on the house. And it's just, it's just difficult. Maybe we need to go through some classes, Mr. Whitten, of how to fill these things out, because I'm a CPA and it still threw me for a loop. So I'm thinking we need to work with that a little bit. But, I just, if you make an honest error with something that's small, I don't know how fair it is to paint somebody as not being honorable in the community. So that's my only concern with that. Because, well, thank you for saying that, but I hate that that even happened to you. That just doesn't seem, in my Indian head, that just does not seem fair to me.
Well, at the time, I was, my net worth was $5,000. I was fined $500.
That
So
much,
I was very, it was my first or second year up there. I was very honest that this was the largest fine ever sent out by the Ethics Commission because it was 10% of my net worth.
I hate that.
But that being said, it's very hard to prove intent, and it was very clear on the back of the form that I needed to list the asset that was tied to the liability, and I couldn't argue, and that's why as soon as the House published it, literally on the floor, I wrote my $500 check and handed it over, and you better believe the paper ran with it. But it's something that I just think it's just hard to prove what intent is.
Did they write you just forgot to put your car down on the paper, or did they just list it as being?
I mislisted the liability, not the asset.
But when they filed the complaint, did they list it that you just forgot to acknowledge something, or did they make it look like you did something bad?
Well, I mean, I did do something bad. I did not disclose. I did not disclose an asset. You know, I did. I have a public responsibility to do that.
I know. I think you made more of an error on something like that. I don't know.
And even if the press crucified you, the only thing I could fault you with is like driving that
A Prius, yes, I know.
Yeah, that's another discussion.
I'd be more embarrassed about that. Sorry. I'm just kidding.
So, do we have any other discussion from the commission? Hearing that.
Do you want to move? I mean, what you know?
It's your call. What do you want to do? You want to
I'd
make
like
a motion?
to. You know, I think this is collegial, and you know, Rita's got a good point there. But is this something that you know?
If you want to, you made the proposal. So if you want to ask, if you want to make a motion.
I have a suggestion, though.
Sure.
If you're going to put this out there, whoever, I think they should have some opportunity when it's presented to have an explanation or rebuttal to it, just what it was about.
And that's why if it was an agenda item, you know, I would have to stand up and say, yes, I have a 2008 Toyota Prius and I have a loan on it, you know. You would certainly have that opportunity. But listen, it's not a necessity. This is something that I'm sure the paper picks up on no matter what, but this, I think, puts us out ahead of the stuff that, hey, we're disclosing this before we read about it in the Florida today. So I honestly see this as something that could benefit us, but if, you know, if this is something that you think, you know, this is completely, utterly, and totally a suggestion, one that I think worked up in Tallahassee, may or may not work here. So I'll go with the majority of the board. I'd just like to know, you know, is this something you?
Personally, I can tell you that if I were guilty of a major something or a minor something, I'd be the first one to tell everybody that I was. Yeah. So, but that's me. So if you think that something like leaving a Prius off my paperwork is important, then let's have a motion, but I don't.
Yeah, I think it's something, if you're going to, you need to tell the county commission anyway. I mean, I would to, you know, say, hey, this is what happened.
As long as it's, you know, you're found guilty of it, because come campaign time, everybody files ethics complaints, and I've seen that. I've seen, not knock on wood, that's never happened to me, but I've seen people get dragged through the mud that shouldn't have, where, you know, their reputation may have been hurt or at least questioned. So make sure that these are founded and violated type of complaints.
Yeah, I learned not to believe half the rumors out there about me when I was running.
I only heard good stuff. You know, you're the one person that everyone said only great things about. So
well, thank
she
you,
doesn't have a Prius, though.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Tobias, what's your preference?
It seems like I'm not going to get the support here, so you know, I'm fine. This was not certainly a sticking point. This was just.
So we'll move on.
I thought everybody was on board with it.
I'm sorry. Maybe I was misreading. I'm not very good at.
I have a different crowd too, a different vibe too. I thought you said you would bring it up and you're okay with it.
Oh, I don't have a dog in the hunt. If it was, I just made the comment that if I was guilty of one of these things, whether it was a major something or a minor something, I would disclose it, period.
And I agree with that, too.
So I don't know that we have the necessity of doing something like this.
Okay.
And I think if it is a major thing, everybody's going to know about it anyhow. And if it's a minor thing, if you're embarrassed because you didn't put your Prius down.
I would never own a Prius, just so we're clear. Sorry.
I've owned multiple Prii, so.
Okay, then I misunderstood. Okay.
Okay, so let's go ahead and table this then. It doesn't look like I'm going to get the support.
Okay, the next one's yours also, your lobbying ordinance.
Okay, yeah, what I did was, and I asked about it, about whether or not to file agenda reports on all this stuff. So what I did is I broke apart the various ordinances that I had into single subjects.
I have it on.
So I could find that maybe the board didn't like one of the proposals and one sank the whole thing. So, yes, the first one.
Oh, wait a minute.
I don't have it.
I did not issue an agenda report.
Somehow I got it. Okay, so
I'm sorry. I mean, it's things that I just took up the ordinances that we discussed prior and broke them up into single subjects. So the first one was, and I think Ms. LaSalle, when she was coming up here and discussing, she talked about it, and that was the lobbyist record of contact. That's the database that Fort Lauderdale was willing to sell us for $10,000 that would disclose any meeting between a registered lobbyist and a county commissioner, the type of contact, what it was about, and when it occurred. So any citizen could go on the county website and see who the registered lobbyist and what they met with the elected official on. So that it was the lobbyist record of contact that we kind of discussed a little bit in the county commission meeting. And the state, to my knowledge, is not, it's done it at the state level, but is not doing it at the county level, nor has a plan, a bill has not popped up dealing with it. So this would be something that we either decide to move forward with or decide not to. But it is a database that works. It's an app, and Fort Lauderdale's had a lot of luck with it. There is a cost. That cost is $10,000.
A thought on it, if I may, sir?
Sure.
Okay. I think maybe if we get started with what we're going, as far as being able to see who's met with us, I wouldn't mind if maybe at the end of the month we post our calendar on our page so that people can see the meetings we had. That might be a start.
I don't, and I think that's great for transparency. But, we have multiple meetings a month, and let's say I'm very anti-all aboard Florida, okay? Lots of people in my district are anti-all aboard Florida. And mine would require within 24 hours. So 3 lobbyists, registered lobbyists for all aboard Florida, come and call me or meet in my office and then discuss it. And you're anti-all aboard Florida, so you go and you see John Tobias, within 24 hours, you can see as a constituent that I've met with all aboard Florida 3 times. So you better believe you're getting on the phone with me because there's a big vote coming up, next week or the week following. So this would give them a turnaround. Yours is great. It just doesn't provide as quick access to that information. Unfortunately, many times it would be after the fact. So that is the great thing about the immediacy with that. Yours is a great suggestion, and I think we wouldn't have to spend the $10,000 in order to do that. But this would be more. This would be a little bit more transparency.
Well, playing devil's advocate.
Sure. I'd be afraid if you were on my side.
Me too.
He has a truck, by the way.
That gets 19 miles to the gallon, and it's a big truck. If I'm Joe Q. Public and I see that there's an issue coming up or on the upcoming commissioner meeting, and I know that issue is all aboard Florida, let's use that because we have that in common too. I'm not going to wait to see if a lobbyist has been to see you, him or her. I'm going to call all of you and say, I hate all aboard Florida. I think you should vote against it. I don't see anything good about it. I again, I just think that we can get lost in the weeds with too many regulations. And I think this solves the problem. I think this gets out in the open. If you want to know, or XYZ Joe Jones wants to know who lobbyists have come to see you in the last 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months, he or she can do that quickly. I know they can do that with me anyway because everything's logged in. Everybody that comes in my office is logged in. But anyway, I just think, again, I think simple's better.
I agree. I just think we're making it too complicated. And I mean, I don't have that in front of me, so I mean, I bring it back some other time. But I like the idea of the way we're going here, just for the lobbyists. Put it on the lobbyists, not on.
The app, it's the lobbyist is the one that is required, and that's the way Fort Lauderdale set it up. So the lobbyist is the one that's, it's very simple. You can do it right there on your app. You pull down, there's 5 commissioners, you pull down, you touch it. You've already got your 6 principal lobbyists. You pull down, you put in the time, you type all aboard Florida, you hit send, it automatically is sent up to the database. So it's not.
So staff does it?
No. It is all incumbent on the registered lobbyist in order to do it. There is no work on any of our parts. It is incumbent on the registered lobbyist to do it. So yeah, there's no staff. The one cost, and full disclosure, is purchasing the software from Fort Lauderdale. I asked about how much it was to do in-house, and it was multiples of that amount. Plus, they have a working database that has been working successfully for quite some time. So, that is, that's the proposal. I just think it adds a level of transparency that, that we have now the technology in order to provide our constituents for what amounts to, a little bit of money.
Maybe Commissioner Tobias, after we see how many lobbyists we have, maybe we could have that discussion again, because if we only have like 2, maybe might be a little overkill, but maybe we can wait a few months down the road and see what it is we're looking at. So I'm still trying to determine that myself.
So you'd be, if we find out we have more than 2, and I don't know what the answer is.
We have 1,000 lobbyists, then that might be quite simple, but I think maybe you could bring that back later after we kind of figure out.
Super. Thank you. I think that's a very good suggestion. You're right. If we have 2, it's probably overkill.
Yeah.
Jim Stone?
I hate to beat a dead horse. Here I am again. And incidentally, I've been sitting back there trying to keep on an elevated plane by reading Imprimis, Hillsdale College. I recommend it as reading to everybody. And it's quite opposite of Agenda 21, as we talked about in an earlier meeting. Anyway, well, I haven't heard one word getting off this elevated plane that you've been on about how you all conduct ethics among yourselves and talking about how you're going to develop ethics throughout Brevard County government. You got layer after layer after layer after layer, and I've complimented the lowest layers because people I talk to are quite honest with me and all that. And I don't care what you all do because we elect you. And if I don't like what you do, I can go out and campaign and spend my money and all that, and that's the recourse. But what happens about the layers in between? I've told you I got royally shafted by one of your departments. My advisors, who I spent a lot of money to, attorney, engineer, the engineer was so mad at you, he quit and went as an engineer in a Florida city. He was so fed up, was trying to get his engineering approved through your development office. 4 development reviews with the same people around the table, and every time we'd come in, we'd implement what they wanted the time before. And I paid to have the engineering all updated, paid the surveyor to go out and redefine the property, paid my attorney to draw up all those paperwork. And I went through that 4 times. Now, do you do that to the big boys that come to town? No, you're afraid of them. But little Jimmy, who only got so much money, you're not afraid of. And I don't like getting screwed. And I'm going to stand up and tell you that time and time again until I see something done in this county. When we started designing for the Apollo program, we just opened the door to everybody. And the solution to having people that weren't going to be part of the program, the solution was put them right back out the door. We were hiring 4,000 people a month. You can't interview, you can't vet, as I hear over and over again. The fix was, if you don't do your job, you're out. And that program was very successful. I haven't heard one word here today about what you're going to do about ethics in the county from department to department. One of your department heads totally ignored a check block that was on the development page that said, I wanted a small area development, which meant 3 homes. When we went into the first meeting, I got hundreds of comments about the inadequacy of the drawings. They're not required. Oh, well, I made a mistake, and I put it out for total review of all the departments. So that's what we got to do. And I looked around. Okay, I've been through this once before. Bite me once, shame on you. Bite me twice, shame on me. I could find no recourse. I talked to my attorney. I talked to my engineer. I talked to the lawyer. Said, Stoney, you might as well go along with it, because if you don't, you'll never get it approved. If I'd have been smart, I'd have just dumped the land right then for anything I could get and got the hell out. I would not have ingrained in me this bitter dislike I have for Brevard County government, and it grew immensely back here when I sat and listened to you adults sit here and talk about whether you ought to move out of one office into another. That doesn't even scratch the surface after what you all did to us with putting the county government here in Viera. And what we went through over the years in trying to get it back out into the county where it was, and big money out of New York come in and convinced our population, oh, this is the best thing for us, when in fact, you all knew it wasn't. And I don't mean you personally, you weren't here. But that would have never happened under the era of Joe Wickham and all these other commissioners that were here before. And I really would love to see somebody do an investigation. What was the net worth of commissioners when they went into office? And now 20 and 30 years later, what's their net worth and how did they derive that money? It'd be an interesting study, wouldn't it? Anyway, I'm not happy with you. And the more I listen to this childish stuff going on, you ought to have somebody in staff that ought to have more intelligence and put together some story that makes sense. Why are you adults here arguing about whether an office ought to be here and there? You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Sorry if I hurt your feelings, and I'm sorry for taking all your time. But there just comes a point in life when you've had enough, and I've had enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here we go.
Okay, do we have anything else that we want to discuss?
Yes, we do. I'd like to discuss the lobbyist financial disclosure. That would be, you know, some of these are white hat lobbyists that we'd find out are making, you know, just a few shekels in order to lobby, and then others that are being paid by large corporations and making king's ransoms. It's not only does the state of Florida do it, but Miami-Dade County does it, Orange County does it. My initial proposal had a one-page. It could be put on the website for no cost, the exact same way that a registration would be. So, you know, I'd like to, again, throw out that, see if it, you know, if it sticks, or do we want to treat lobbyists that make, you know, $1,000 a month the same as those that make $10,000 or $20,000, you know, a month. So this would be just a one-page disclosure with a range of how much that they make, the same way that, again, Miami-Dade, Orange County, and the state of Florida does.
A compromise of that could be either something as simple as, you know, them filing their financial disclosure that they do file with the state, like they could file that with their application, a copy of it, a certified copy of it, or a link to their state, where a link, say, on our website or on the app, where, I mean, just if it's about transparency and it's about giving the public access. It may be a simpler thing than...
No, I'm with you, but what happens if you're a lobbyist in Brevard County and you don't lobby in Tallahassee? You don't have a presence up there, so you're not subject to any of the statutes
that's true.
that are in place, and I think you'd find that a number
I keep thinking big, I don't...
Yeah, and
Right.
it's just a one page. It was included in there. You champion the other one, Commissioner Pritchett. What's your thought on the disclosure portion of it?
Maybe that might be something we could bring back again with the other one. I'm just still doing baby steps with this, trying to figure it out. And actually, what I brought in was really yours that I just kind of got to a place that I could handle making sense with.
It's yours now. You've taken that hot potato. You ran it through much more successfully than I did.
Well, it was your suggestion, and you got me thinking about it. I'm still learning this job, and I'm still learning lobbyists, because before that I thought everybody lobbied me, so I'm starting to figure out the definition differences we're looking at here. And as I'm meeting with people, I'm starting to understand this job a little more that way also. So if you wouldn't mind us having that discussion again in a little while down the road, and that, for my head, I could wrap around and see if it's something that we needed to do. That would help me out a lot.
Okay. Again, if we have two, maybe it's not all that important, or maybe it's easy.
That's
if we
what I was
have
thinking.
20,
Yeah.
I just don't know. My thought is it's not fair treating the white hat client that doesn't receive any, because technically they would, they may have to register if, they get a free trip somewhere, because that would be compensation. The same as we treat some of these lobbyists and that are making quite a bit of money. So I would be more than willing to table that and see how many people register as we move forward. So
I have a question.
Sure.
Displaying my naivete, I'm guessing, but what difference does it make if a lobbyist makes $20,000 or $1,000? What's the difference? Why is it our business to know how much he or she makes?
Out of full disclosure, you don't think the intensity in which a lobbyist receives compensation has anything to do with the amount of time, effort, or campaign contributions that may go into an election one way or another?
Well, campaign contributions are limited, aren't they? So
If you think they're limited, then I've got,
Well, then I am naive, because if somebody says that XYZ lobbyist makes $20,000 and ABC lobbyist only makes $1,000, this guy can still only give me $1,000, and this guy can only give me $1,000. I'm looking for, educate me. I don't
the
get it.
first thing I'd educate you is open a PC in which you can take a $50,000 check from either one of those folks. So if I was educating you as far as a campaign consultant, that would be
I thought
my
I was
first
limited
one.
to $1,000.
So, and we'll get there. I have that coming up, but I think we can wait. We've moved forward. We've moved the ball down a little bit. So, is it okay? I've got a couple more that were brought up.
Before you leave that, though, I'd just like to make one comment.
Sure.
To me, it looks like, there's a big difference between the state level of lobbying, because you have Big Sugar, you have all these other ones. They're much bigger issues, because they're looking at regulations affect the whole state, so there's a lot more at stake for them. Sometimes I think we're, maybe it's point here, trying to overkill some of this, because it's a much smaller scale. So when we look through all this, I'm not saying no yet, but when we look through all this, let's kind of take that into consideration, too.
And that's why I cited, 2 other counties that have this currently, in their ordinances. So, but yes, I don't disagree with the premise. The next one would be the revolving door, which is the lobbying extension from 2 to 6 years. As of yesterday, Tallahassee, I got the question, where'd you come up with 6 years? the Florida House of Representatives came up with 6 years, and 7001 House Joint Resolution 7001 was filed, in which members of the legislature would not be able to lobby the legislature from 2 to now 6 years. So I think that that's probably a wise provision to put on us as county commissioners. And not only that, but to add the second part of the revolving door with coming back and getting a county job. I think that's probably the more egregious of the thing, and it's happened in the past where former county commissioners have tried to gain employment with the county, that they would have advantages that other folks would not. So that's why I brought it up on on January 24th, was this this 6-year revolving door. So I'd like to see the I don't know if this was the one idea that sunk the proposal, because I had 3 proposals in there, or we agreed with that and moved forward with it, or what's the discretion of the board?
Any comments?
Did Florida go ahead and pass that to be 6 years?
No, it's a House Joint Resolution. So what that means is it doesn't need the governors, if it makes it through the House, and it doesn't need the governors, it'll go on the ballot, and the voters will have to make that determination.
So
now, it's in the House rules, but this would make it, put it in our, and I don't know that it needs to be in the Constitution, but this would put it in Constitution. And looking through it, because it just came out, it's not subject to us. But I think it would set a precedent that if you can't do it up in Tallahassee, I don't think you should be doing it here in Brevard County.
Yeah, I was kind of waiting to see what happened at that level. I didn't mind it too much, because I looked at all of us and I realized none of us are going to be lobbying. So it's, I mean.
Or potentially coming back and looking for a job with the county.
Yeah.
But, we have to look out for folks that, may come after us.
So you added that in differently than what you gave us last time, though, right? Because I'm not sure we had the discussion about that part coming back.
Someone brought it up. Someone said, why just lobbying? Why not, county jobs? And you know what? Turns out that was the better idea than lobbying, because I don't know that we've had commissioners in the past come back and lobby, but I know we've had commissioners in the past come back and get jobs.
I thought about that, too, because you can't stop our family members from getting jobs, or, spouses. So we've got a whole thing out there. I don't even know how to regulate all that stuff, with those types of things.
I think you have to be careful when you're talking like family members, because, full disclosure, my brother works for the county, and he probably would prefer to lay low, so I won't mention his name.
Yeah.
He's a very quiet person, but he was here long ago, long ago.
But
so.
this would only pertain to commissioners.
Yeah.
If you wanted to add that stuff, I wouldn't be opposed. But I'm not even touching husband, wife, nephew,
you throw
niece,
this
son,
stuff out,
or daughter.
and I just start down a path of thinking what it is we're trying to do. So I don't think I went down that path yet as far as employment. So I haven't had an opportunity to think that through.
Okay. So, yeah. Okay. What is
I haven't really thought about that much. This came up before a couple of years ago, and one of the things that I'm kind of thinking about all these other factors. Say someone the county commission actually retires, and they want to go get a job just mowing the lawn at Fort Parks. They can't do that, for minimum, not much money. So of course, that's probably just out there outside the norm, but I can see people doing that. The thing also is we have the county, it's a close-knit organization. So, not employees, the county itself. So I think we just have to think this thing through. And the other side is, does it apply to the charter officers? And does it apply to the sheriff's department? Does it apply to all these other elements? So.
Well, I was specific on county commission, and I think you have a very reasonable suggestion. I don't think it's egregious to go back and work for the county as a lifeguard. Not that I would know anything about being a lifeguard, but no one's going to argue with you using influence to get a $12 or $14 job. I think that would be great if we set a level like a director or a sub-director or hire somebody that is making someone that is making more than what they're currently making at their county commission. But I don't think you would hear from anyone arguing the fact, and I think that's a very good, and I would fully support that as a a provision that would, within any reason, as if we could move this forward.
Those things are just to think about. I think
it's a great
something
idea
to bring back,
Yeah, we passed an ordinance last year, when we were in a policy. We passed a policy. And I wanted to make it 4 years. At the time, it was only 1. So we kind of compromised. We doubled it to 2, but I was looking for 4. So I think it's something that we should consider going forward.
I'm okay with 4. 4 is better than what we have.
Well, I'm with you. I just have a real problem with somebody that would use a leadership position and then leave and come back and expect, perhaps is the right word, that they would automatically be considered for a job because they were a county commissioner. And to me, that just kind of stinks. It doesn't pass the smell test.
This happened in another state institution in Brevard County. That someone was a executive, a board of trustee member who resigned a position as board of trustee to get a more lucrative position in the institution.
So I think we should consider it going forward.
Can we direct staff to draw, and we can discuss the changes, and as you bring them forward. So
Because I'm sure in the future, if there was like an odd circumstance, the person or the issue may be appealed to the board anyway. If you had, you know what I mean, if you had somebody that you would, sort of, I guess, vary on your policy if it was somebody who was looking for something part-time or, you know what I mean, like, again, because I just hesitate to get too detailed with it, because then we end up, oh, except for this, and oh, plus that.
Yeah, then you start arguing the definition of is.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if.
Okay, so can we direct the board to, or the staff to provide some sort of...
What's the pleasure of the board?
Sounds good. I don't know.
Do that?
Work on it. Yeah, see what you can come up with.
Thank you. Okay, another one that I had there was and I brought up cell phones usage while we were on the commission, and Commissioner Pritchett very wisely said, well, there's 15 other different electronic means that you can get these type of messaging. And it wasn't the intent to limit you. In fact, I had that in the draft. If your son or daughter is sick or something like this, you would only be responsible for the disclosure of stuff that pertained directly. I just want to make sure that a lobbyist isn't out there texting you, hey, you need to vote this way, or hey, ask her this question, unduly, influencing you one way or another. And mine might have been too restrictive, but it was just a first go, and this provides us the opportunity. So if we were to put in those type of provisions, still there should be disclosure if one of those things does happen. If you have a lobbyist, then I don't think you should respond back, but it should become, public record. But Commissioner Pritchett, you're the one that had those suggestions on it, and I think they were very wise. What is?
I would agree with that. My other caution would be I would like my staff to be able to send me information if they need to, because I have discussions with them all the time. Not that they would be a conduit for lobbyists, that would bother me very much, but if they, instead of walking up to hand me a piece of paper, they send me a little note, don't forget to look at this page, or something like that, so we can make good decisions. And sometimes I use that for Google for things. I think we need to be ethical and not be rude with our folks.
So if we said you were smart enough to enter lobbyist, the definition of lobbyist in there. So if we were to say a lobbyist is, a lobbyist a registered lobbyist has texted you, then you would have to disclose that?
Well, yeah, like when we did in Brevard, Florida, if they would have texted me, said, hey, I'll settle for this amount, it would have been so wrong for me to have that information without telling everybody. They just said they would settle. So I can understand your point with that, because that wasn't even quasi-judicial.
I'm with you.
So I could agree to that. I think that's just common sense ethics.
And I think it's rude to sit there and what former, when other commissioners are looking up the tax to give the speaker who's taking their time to come up there and argue a point or another. But I don't think we should make that a violation. That is, something that they have to, address with their constituents, when they're up for election. I don't want to limit. I hope they wouldn't do that personally, but I don't want to make that a violation, an ordinance violation.
Because we're required to forward anything. Like a perfect example, and I'm glad that you brought that up, is at about 2:30, I actually emailed my husband, and I said, you have to grab Mike from school. He gets out at 3, well, he gets out about 3:20, but I like to get there early, otherwise I'm 8 miles and in the road. And then my daughter gets out, I have to be in her line by 4. And he's able to pick up the kids, but it's just that communication saying, okay, I'm still here, and he's texting back, okay, did you get it? I got Jackie, that kind of stuff. So that's why that helps me rest easy, because the mom in me is still responsible for that sort
Absolutely.
of stuff. Because he's got a pretty important job himself, so if we're able to work off each other, then, but that's another example of it. I thought that was good timing, because I just said, you got Jackie? Yes, I got Jackie. That's the kind of communication that I do. But I think I've only had 1 or 2 emails that went to a personal email, but I try to never, ever have any discussion, because I'll say, give me a call or come to the office if anybody wants to text, because it's too cumbersome to keep that kind of public record, so I'd rather not.
Yeah. And I'm hoping soon we're all in the electronic age here soon at our desks. So we're having computer capabilities and able to research anything in an instant that we need to from the dais too. So
Forget that.
we're hoping
so
for you.
can
guys
we-
are all
can we-
those trees.
I got, I just don't.
I know, and they're so
I mean, I
heavy.
don't get texts from lobbyists in a meeting. I mean, I just
I
don't.
never have either.
I don't either.
Haven't either.
If I
Never
would,
have.
I may text them back and say, don't you ever communicate with me. And then I just disclose it. I would. I mean, I don't, you don't have to make it a rule. I would do it. I just don't.
It probably wouldn't have to be just a lobbyist. It could be anybody that's
Yeah.
trying to influence your opinion.
Exactly.
But yeah, I've never had a lobbyist text me in my 2 terms at city.
And the best thing I've learned lately, I just keep my phone in my pocket.
Yeah.
And except when I have to look and see if somebody's
Well,
put my
in
roof
full
on yet.
disclosure, when I wasn't chairman and the meetings would get boring, kind of like now, I'd be looking at my Facebook.
Commissioner.
I didn't text anybody, because I hardly ever text anybody, and I certainly didn't receive any. But the people looking for boogeymen, I know he's up there texting, he's getting stuff from, but people looking for boogeymen are never going to trust anybody. So,
That's why I found myself paranoid texting my husband, because I thought, oh my gosh, people probably think I'm up here chatting, like, hey, what's up?
but now that I'm chairman, I don't even bring my phones, because I have to pay attention all the time. I can't daydream. Full disclosure, guys.
So do you want to move forward with that, or do you think that we shouldn't disclose, if a lobbyist texts us?
I think it's overkill, to be honest with you. I mean, you can if you want. I just think it's an overkill. I mean, if somebody's going to text me, I don't have no problem just disclosing it, that someone's actual lobbyist, but we have to find out what that
I
lobbyist
can't
is
imagine
first.
a lobbyist would be stupid enough. But you know what?
He does. He or she does.
In the real world, there could be somebody sitting here someday that's crooked as a country mile and would entertain a lobbyist texting them. Is that going to be tomorrow, next week, 10 years from now? I don't know. So I don't
Okay,
know.
I can count to 3. I got it. We'll move forward. Let me ask you on these 3 that, knowing that this workshop was coming up, I didn't put these 3 on the agenda. So these are the 3 dealing with elections, and I know I heard a lot of this while I was running. So I wanted to bring these 3 before you. The first is a gift ban. Florida law requires disclosure if we receive anything up to $100, but we're allowed to receive something up to $100. There's Brevard County has a policy, but we found out the policies probably aren't the best direction to go. So now that we will have defined what a lobbyist, is, and we'll have them registered, my proposal for ordinance would say a complete gift ban from those folks that are registered as lobbyists who are seeking influence from us. No reciprocation, no $100 limit, just nothing from those. If I am out to coffee with them, they buy their coffee and I buy my coffee. So, that would be my suggestion as far as a gift ban. And I wanted to see, what you guys' thoughts on that absolute gift ban would be via ordinance, not policy.
Well, I can't weigh in one side or the other because I've never had a breakfast or a lunch or anything with a lobbyist, so.
I just worry at Christmas time because somebody will drop cookies by and I don't know who they came from. I mean, really,
True. It's true.
Oh, yeah, how would you handle that? Because even this Christmas, I was just in there.
Well, I
with a
hope
can
if
of
someone
nuts
drops
and-
off random cookies at your doorstep, you don't eat them.
Well,
That's probably not the best
The ones I
suggestion.
get come in a nice tin and they're wrapped in plastic.
People in suits.
People in suits.
And boxes of chocolates and stuff, too. I've had a few of those.
Yeah. I don't have any problem with that because I don't do that anyways. I've just developed that habit from being on the city council. Nobody buys my lunch, nobody buys me anything, or else reciprocate back and forth if it's a continual thing.
Yeah,
So
well, we have reciprocation, and I thought that's just easier,
So you're saying just exclude any gift from a cup of coffee to infinity?
Well, technically, you're not allowed to take anything over $100.
Right. No,
You have to
but you're
disclose it.
suggesting don't take anything from a lobbyist.
Correct.
what if we just disclose everything? That way, if you get that can of nuts dropped off, we just put in they dropped off a can of nuts.
By anonymous.
Yeah, well,
What if you forget?
could be
That's
awful
my
that
fear.
could be
Somebody's
onerous,
always
though.
looking to get you. I would.
That could be onerous. I mean, every time somebody, of course, how many times?
Well, there's
somebody-
probably not going to be all that many lobbyists out there. I just take the perception, we don't take anything it's much easier to say, we don't take anything
I
from
agree.
lobbyists.
Yeah, that works.
They can't give us anything over $100. This says we can't get a cup of coffee. Not that a cup of coffee is going to do it.
So instruct staff to put something together so we can vote on it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Is everybody good with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, two more. I'm almost done here. A couple, Cocoa Beach did this. Alachua County, Leon County has done this. The Florida legislature recently, within the last couple of years, increased the limit to $1,000. It used to be $500. I voted against that. I thought that $1,000 might be a little bit too.
$1,000 for what?
Contribution limit in hard money. A few years ago, when I started, it was $500. Now it's $1,000. I wanted to, with the way that other counties and the city has gone, $1,000 is out of most people's ability to give. So my thought was to look at lowering that amount, whether it be back down to $500 or $250. I just think that $1,000 is awfully high. I've been instructed that we are allowed to do it. We're allowed to create ordinances that are more strict than state policy, and counties have taken this, and their limits are $250. I'm open to thoughts on that one.
I don't have any. I don't know how many I didn't get too many $1,000.
Nope.
Except from family members.
What would be the enforcement? I mean, how would that be monitored? Because it's a state requirement now. I mean, state at 1,000. How would it be enforced at the?
Well, we would have, obviously, that the state wouldn't be enforcing it. It would be the responsibility of the county to enforce it. So when we direct policy, when we direct staff to do something about it, obviously, we would have a list of, penalties if folks were to receive that amount.
The charter officers wouldn't be affected. They could still have 1,000.
Correct. This would just be for county commissioners.
I think it should be uniform.
I'm not arguing with that fact. If that is the discretion, I'd rather see everyone in the state only be able to get $500. But
See, and I would be okay with that, but I think when you start doing something different than what the state's doing, and with campaigns, I mean, as well as I do, and I've run for office enough, and I've seen other our finance reports, not only does everybody see whether or not it's a lobbyist or somebody else, you get like $500 or $1,000 from 4 people from the same house. that are all adults. So they will find a way to get you that money. So you can make a $500 limit, but I think you're just it's more making a statement than having an impact, at least in my personal opinion.
I've got a list of 3, and there's a much longer list, so, and.
Yeah, but in your argument at the commission meeting, you were saying, well, just because other municipalities are doing it, we
I
shouldn't be
do,
doing
it works
Yeah.
both ways. Hey,
I know, no, I get it,
I made an argument for workshop being the weed regulation, and that was the worst idea ever, yet here we sit at a, so yeah.
And I think your intentions are good. I just want to be careful that we're not so inconsistent where you get somebody who doesn't know, who's running for office for the first time, and they get nailed with, because they take $1,000 from their brother that, but I personally, either way, it's the will of the board. I just think that that's something to keep in our minds.
Yeah, I think it just needs to be consistent across the county. If you have charter officers that don't have to abide by that, I just think it should be consistent,
So, I mean,
I'd say no.
You'd say no?
I agree with that. That's a good point.
How do we get the charter offices?
I don't even know if we have that, I don't think.
No.
Charter
They
amendment.
have to come from the state?
So
It'd have to be a charter amendment.
okay, so we wouldn't be able to, so you'd be down, okay, fine, I'm good. And last one, guys, last one. I've lived under this one as a member of the legislature, and I thought it was one of the best rules that we had up
Saving
there.
the best for last?
Yes, that is to say that we can't receive campaign contributions during budgeting. The folks that, are wanting to influence the most would save those resources for, when we were making the decisions on how to fund A, B, or C. So the legislature, in their wisdom years before I got there, of course, said during session, when we're dealing with the budget, you cannot accept campaign contributions. And I understand we're in a 12-month budget cycle here. But speaking with staff, they can set a date when it lands on our desk to when we vote on it, where we say we don't want the perception that we're accepting campaign contributions during that period to, not that a $500 or $1,000 check would influence us, but to vote one way or another, or to add something to budget or to take something away. But certainly I think it would. Certainly, I think it was something that would at least give the perception that there's a little more ethics or transparency in the process.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that as long as you made it some. Well, our budget period is over June 1st or
No.
September 1st.
October.
October 1st. Wow, that's kind of
It
tough.
falls right across primary.
Yeah, so
And
that's
it
pretty
gives
tough.
an unfair advantage to anybody sitting and running for office
That's
again.
what I think, too.
And I appreciate your efforts, but I think the state legislature, because you allocate monies for grants, for projects, I understand why you can't get campaign contributions, because you have lobbyists that are just in your ear at your office and your debt. We manage departments and we allocate funding for departments. I don't think it's the same situation, at least in my opinion. And I think you could hurt somebody up here running, not intentionally, but it gives somebody an unfair advantage if you're sitting and trying to do what you were elected to do. That's why you're there, and then you don't have the ability
And the timing's different in the legislature anyway. It's
Right.
first part of the year.
But you shouldn't, in the legislature, I would 150%
And this is
agree with that.
during the summertime, and you're going through primary, and then you're going through general, and it's all right in that time frame.
But the legislature is responsible for
Yeah, exactly. We don't
lots of
really,
movement, and
I don't see how we can even be
Mr. Knox, I have another question on that same line. That suppose Mr. Tobias is living under this restriction that he can't receive. Suppose I started a PAC called Friends of John Tobias, and I could receive funds for him, correct? And he wouldn't be in violation because the PAC would be receiving them. Is that correct?
If the PAC's receiving money, they haven't turned it over during the 3-month period it's going to be that you don't do it, I think you're okay.
Yeah, so that's my point. So,
But the problem, I
don't think that works.
I think the problem is you're going to be,
We couldn't disperse that. The PAC couldn't disperse any money during the budget period, but we could collect it. So that circumvents the whole idea.
that may or may not help somebody who's running for election and can't use the money.
Right. Right.
We're always working on the budget, so it'd be difficult to say for sure when
Okay, so
are we not making those
I'm not good with
decisions.
that.
Okay, just wanted to bring it up for discussion. You
Good
brought
stuff.
some valid points.
Good stuff. Made us all think. Okay, having nothing further, anyone else have anything to say?
I'll be very quick. I just have one thing, and like I said, I didn't provide a notice or a menu of
It's all right.
options. I just
You're good.
Just as an idea, because obviously this took this many hours, I would suggest, and I know some people, I may get a few eye rolls, is that rather than having a commission on ethics, is that we have like a committee that handles ethics, it's sort of like a recommendation board. And they don't have to meet monthly, they don't have to meet every other month, but even if they meet semi-annually, you could have a board with each of us an appointee to suggest anything that, any ideas or any thoughts. And
Is this like, not just for us, but for all ethics within the county?
yeah, why not?
Yeah, what do you think,
I think
Gary?
it's a good idea because, but as long as you don't muddy up and you don't change their role, they're just an advisory board. They're a committee, they're not a commission. Because I've read quite a bit about other municipalities doing that.
Okay.
But just a committee, just to make recommendations, I don't think that that would be in violation of anything. You can have a committee that,
That's a very good idea. And if if the ethics issues become a real problem and some enforcement involved, they could originate with that committee also, instead of bringing it to like the county manager, letting him tell the county commissioner that
I think his
they're-
question was for the entire county or just county government under the Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah.
the entire county government. Yeah, you could do that. That'd be a separate ordinance, so it's not going to be part of this one, but it could be incorporated with this one. Because it's going to have a wider,
I just want to be careful it doesn't turn into another administrative type of county function. I just want it to be an advisory board of citizens that offers their input and suggestions. And, I mean, I'm sure that people here, there's probably a few people here that have a few ideas that we haven't brought up. So I don't want to make it a difficult, cumbersome thing for staff or for us, but
Would we need an ordinance to create a new citizens advisory board?
Probably, yes.
probably make it as part of this. They'd be doing something similar to what you're doing today, which is going over ideas and coming with
You can call it, yeah.
recommendations.
Just an ethics advice, and then everybody have an appointment. And luckily, I mean, or hopefully, our new ruling will be that they can be in any district, and then, you know, you could have it a 5 or a 7-member board. I've read quite a few. That's why I didn't produce anything today, because there's like a lot of options out there, but I could work with you on it if, and it talks about the rules and.
I think it's very appropriate for the day we're in.
I think
It
so.
could be a good board.
We good?
It's past your bedtime.
It's getting there. Anyone else have anything they want to add, say? Do we want to have any board reports? Anybody have anything they want to point out? No?
I do.
Mr. Knox, you are front and center.
Since we had an executive session this afternoon, we actually got a resolution done, which I would like to hand out to you.
Quick.
Never have one that quick.
Yes, well, it's because we're in a hurry. Explain it when I write distributed.
I bet you it's not the last item we talked about. It's not the last item we talked about, is it?
Yes, it is.
It is?
We can say
And you
we
got
came to the meeting unprepared. This is the first time I've seen this.
This is
All
the
righty. So,
resolution regarding the fee issue involving appraisals for Calhoun Dreggers and Associates
I didn't either.
that we discussed at the executive session on Meadowbrook and Tradewinds. And basically, it sets forth the fees we have paid to other appraisers and engineers in the past, and also states what you, as a county commission, think was the reasonable fee. And we talked about bringing it back at the at the March 2nd meeting, but she was able to get it done today, and I think the faster we get it done, the better off we're going to be, so we're not running up attorney's fees up in Tallahassee.
do we need a motion?
That's what we'd like to see.
Okay, we have a proposal before us to accept the resolution regarding the appraisal fees and authorize the chair to sign. Do I have a motion to move forward?
Motion to approve?
Commissioner Zanardi makes a motion to approve. We have a second.
You do. Second.
Commissioner Pritchett is a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. Where do I sign? You want me to sign this one, or you have another one for me to
You can
sign?
sign that one if you want to.
Okay, with that, nothing else? We're adjourned.
You've set a bad precedent that you can turn these out in.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.